The stars had never looked so cold. Admiral Wei stood on the bridge of the UES Defender and watched the tactical display with growing dread. 500 red dots filled the screen. Each dot was an enemy warship. Each warship carried enough firepower to destroy a city, and all of them were heading toward Earth. "Admiral, the Hegemony fleet will reach firing range in 6 hours, said Lieutenant Park. Her voice was steady, but could see her hands shaking slightly. Nodded slowly. He had commanded humanity's defense fleet for 15 years. He had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. He had protected mining colonies from raiders, but nothing had prepared him for this. Nothing could prepare anyone for this. The Hegemony was a coalition of 12 alien species that controlled most of the galaxy. They had watched humanity spread across the solar system for the past 2 centuries. They had watched humans build colonies on Mars and the moons of Jupiter. They had watched and they had waited. And now they had decided that humanity had grown too ambitious. The message from the Hegemony had been simple: surrender unconditionally or face extinction. The United Earth Council had refused. They had spoken of human rights and dignity. They had spoken of freedom and self-determination. The Hegemony had not bothered to respond. They had simply sent their fleet. Looked at his own forces on the display. 47 warships. That was everything humanity had. 47 against 500. It was not a battle. It was an execution. "Get me a channel to all ships," said. "Channel open, Admiral." Took a deep breath. "This is Admiral to all vessels. You have all seen the enemy fleet. You all know the odds. I will not lie to you. Today might be our last day. But I want you to remember something. We are fighting for our families. We are fighting for our children. We are fighting for everyone who has ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of reaching them. Whatever happens today, let us make sure the universe remembers that humanity did not go quietly." He closed the channel. The bridge was silent. Everyone was thinking about their loved ones back on Earth. Everyone was preparing to die. Far from the main fleet, in a high orbit around Earth's moon, something stirred. The Luna Historical Preserve was a collection of old spacecraft that humanity had kept as monuments to their past. There were ancient rockets from the first space age. There were early colony ships that had carried settlers to Mars. And tucked away in a corner, almost forgotten, was a ship that did not belong there. The UES Argonaut looked like a relic. Its hull was and pitted from countless battles fought long ago. Its design was strange, different from any other human vessel. Most people who visited the preserve walked past it without a second glance. The information plaque said it was a frigate from humanity's early expansion period. It said the ship was decommissioned and no longer functional. The plaque was wrong. Deep inside the Argonaut, lights began to flicker on. Systems that had been dormant for 300 years started to wake up. Power flowed through conduits that looked impossibly advanced for a ship supposedly built in humanity's past. And in the central command chamber, a figure stirred. Commander Sarah Vance opened her eyes. The cryogenic pod around her hissed as it released its seals. She took a gasping breath, feeling the cold leave her lungs as warm air filled them. For a long moment, she simply lay there remembering. 300 years. She had been asleep for 300 years. "Commander," a calm, synthetic voice filled the chamber. "The awakening protocol has been triggered." Sarah sat up slowly. Her body ached from centuries of stillness. "Report, Arya, what triggered the protocol?" Arya was the Argonaut's artificial intelligence. She had been created using technology that humanity was not supposed to possess. Technology that came from a time in human history that very few people knew about. "Sensors have detected a hostile fleet of approximately 500 vessels approaching Earth," Arya said. "Earth's defense forces consist of 47 vessels. Probability of successful defense is less than 2%. Sarah closed her eyes. They had failed. All those years ago, they had fought so hard to protect humanity's future. They had sacrificed so much. And now, 3 centuries later, the same threat had returned. "Wake the others," Sarah said. One by one, the crew of the Argonaut emerged from their cryogenic sleep. There were 37 of them in total. Each one was a veteran of a war that history had forgotten. Each one carried knowledge that the modern world did not possess. Lieutenant James Torres was the weapons officer. He was a tall man with a scar running down his left cheek. He had earned that scar fighting the first Hegemony invasion, the invasion that no one remembered. Doctor was the chief engineer. She understood the Argonaut systems better than anyone. Systems that used principles of physics that modern human scientists were only beginning to discover. Captain Michael was second in command. He had served with Sarah since the beginning, since the day they discovered the truth about humanity's place in the universe. They gathered on the bridge, still shaking off the effects of cryogenic sleep. Through the viewports, they could see Earth hanging in the blackness of space. It looked peaceful. It had no idea what was coming. 300 years, Michael said quietly. I had hoped we would never need to wake up. So did I, Sarah replied. But hope does not win wars. Arya, show me the tactical situation. A holographic display appeared in the center of the bridge. The Hegemony fleet was clearly visible, a massive swarm of red dots moving steadily toward the blue dot that represented Earth. The small cluster of green dots near Earth was the human defense fleet. The Hegemony has sent a standard Extinction fleet, Arya reported. Composition includes 200 destroyers, 150 cruisers, 100 battleships, and 50 Dominion command vessels. Their commander is High Admiral of the Dominion species. Sarah said the name with cold recognition. He commanded the fleet that attacked Earth 300 years ago. The same individual, Arya confirmed. Dominion species have natural exceeding 500 years. Michael's hands tightened into fists. He came to finish what he started. And we are going to stop him, Sarah said. Again, Arya, begin full system activation. Torres, start warming up the weapons. I need the engines ready in 1 hour. The crew moved to their stations with practiced efficiency. Despite 3 centuries of sleep, they had not forgotten their training. They had not forgotten their purpose. In orbit around Earth, Admiral received an unexpected communication. Admiral, we are detecting an energy signature from the Luna Historical Preserve, Lieutenant Park reported. It appears to be a spacecraft powering up. Frowned, the preserve is just old museum ships. None of them are operational. The signature is definitely a ship coming online, sir. Our sensors cannot identify the power source. The readings are strange. Strange how? Park studied her console with confusion on her face. The energy levels are higher than anything in our fleet, higher than anything I have ever seen. Sir, this ship, whatever it is, has more power than all 47 of our vessels combined. Before could respond, a new voice came through the communication system. It was calm and confident. United Earth Fleet, this is Commander Sarah Vance of the UES Argonaut. We are here to help. Exchanged a bewildered look with his bridge crew. UES Argonaut, I have never heard of that vessel. Who are you? That is a long story, Admiral, and we do not have much time. What matters right now is that we have fought these enemies before. We know how to beat them. Will you accept our assistance? Thought quickly. He had 47 ships against 500. He had no chance of victory. And now a mysterious ship was offering help, a ship with impossible power readings. I am listening, Commander. What do you propose? Have your fleet fall back to defensive positions around Earth. Protect the planet. Let us handle the Hegemony. You could not hide his disbelief. 1 ship against 500. We have done it before. There was absolute certainty in Sarah's voice. Did not understand it, but something about her tone made him believe it. Very well, Commander. We will support you however we can. Thank you, Admiral. Arya, take us out of the preserve. The Argonaut's engines came to life. To the observers watching from Earth and the defense fleet, it looked like a miracle. The old, weathered frigate rose from its place among the museum ships and began to move. As it did, its hull seemed to change. The scars and pitting faded away, revealing armor that gleamed with an inner light. Systems that had been hidden behind false panels emerged. Weapon ports that had been sealed for 3 centuries opened. The Argonaut had disguised itself as a relic. Now it was showing its true face. On the bridge of the Dominion command ship, High Admiral received the report with amusement. A single human vessel has broken from the main fleet, his tactical officer reported. It is approaching our formation alone. Was a Dominion, a tall being with gray skin and 4 arms. His species had ruled their corner of the galaxy for 10,000 years. They viewed younger species like humans as barely more than insects. One ship let out a rumbling laugh. These humans are sending one ship against my fleet. They are even more pathetic than I thought. Admiral, our sensors are having difficulty reading the vessel. Its design does not match any known human ship class. It does not matter what kind of ship it is. It will be destroyed like all the others. Ignore it. Continue our approach to the planet. The Hegemony fleet pressed forward. 500 warships in perfect formation, carrying enough weapons to burn the surface of Earth to glass. They had done it to other worlds before. They would do it again. Sarah watched the enemy fleet grow larger on the. Her heart was racing, but her hands were steady. She had done this before. She could do it again. Arya status report. All systems at full power. Weapons charged, shields at maximum. The crew is at battle stations. Good. Sarah turned to look at her crew. They were ready. After 300 years of waiting, they were finally going to finish what they started. Everyone listen to me. The modern world has forgotten who we are. They have forgotten what we did. They have forgotten the truth about humanity's history. Today, we remind them. Today, we remind everyone. She turned back to face the massive fleet that waited there. Arya, open a channel to the Hegemony fleet. Channel open. Sarah spoke clearly, knowing that her words would reach every ship in the enemy formation. This is Commander Sarah Vance of the United Earthship Argonaut to High Admiral and the Hegemony fleet. 300 years ago, you came to destroy humanity. You failed. We drove you back. We made you promise to never return. You broke that promise. So now I am going to remind you why you were afraid to come back. On the Dominion command ship was no longer laughing. His 4 hands gripped his command chair as a memory stirred in his ancient mind. A memory he had tried very hard to forget. That name, he whispered, I know that name. His tactical officer looked at him with confusion. Admiral. The Argonaut, it cannot be. We destroyed it, we watched it die. Admiral, what is the Argonaut? Did not answer. He was staring at the single ship on his. A ship that should not exist. A ship from a battle that the Hegemony had erased from their own records because it was too shameful to remember. All ships, commanded, his voice tight with sudden fear. Target that vessel, destroy it immediately. 100 weapons locked onto the Argonaut. Energy beams and missiles launched from the front ranks of the Hegemony fleet. Enough firepower to destroy, a small moon streaked toward the lone human ship. Sarah did not flinch. Arya, show them what we can do. The Argonaut moved. It moved in a way that no ship should be able to move. One moment it was directly in the path of the incoming fire. The next moment it was somewhere else entirely. The weapons that had been aimed at it hit empty space. And then the Argonaut fired back. A beam of light erupted from the frigate's bow. It was not like any weapon the modern world had ever seen. It passed through the shields of the first destroyer as if they did not exist. The destroyer exploded in a ball of fire that consumed 2 more ships beside it. The Argonaut fired again, and again. Each shot destroyed another enemy vessel. The ancient frigate danced through the Hegemony formation like a ghost, untouchable and unstoppable. On Earth, billions of people watched the battle on their screens. They had expected to see their fleet destroyed. They had expected to see their world burn. Instead, they watched a single ship tear through the enemy like a blade through paper. Admiral stared at his tactical display in disbelief. What is that ship? No one could answer him. No one understood what they were seeing. In the space between Earth and the Hegemony fleet, the Argonaut continued its assault. 12 enemy ships had already been destroyed. 20, 30. The massive alien formation was starting to scatter as panic spread through their ranks. Sarah allowed herself a small smile. They remembered now. The Hegemony remembered what humanity was truly capable of. "This is just the beginning," she said. "Tors, charge the main weapon." Tors looked at her with wide eyes. "The main weapon? Commander, if we use that, we will reveal everything." "I know, but these people deserve to know the truth. Humanity deserves to know who they really are." Sarah turned back to where 500 warships were now trying desperately to regroup against a single frigate. 300 years ago, the Hegemony attacked Earth. They expected to find primitive humans just beginning to reach the stars. Instead, they found something else entirely. They found what humanity had once been, what humanity could become again. Today, the universe remembers. She gave the order. "Arya, activate the Genesis cannon." Deep within the Argonaut, systems that had been sealed for 3 centuries came online. The ship itself seemed to pulse with power as energy that conventional physics gathered at its core. High Admiral saw the readings on his sensors. His gray skin went pale. "No," he whispered, "that is impossible. That weapon was destroyed." But it had not been destroyed. It had only been hidden along with the truth about humanity's past, hidden until the day it would be needed again. The day had come. On Earth, across the solar system, throughout the watching Hegemony fleet, everyone held their breath. Something was about to change. Something fundamental about the universe was about to be revealed. And at the center of it all, the ancient frigate Argonaut prepared to show humanity who they truly were. The Genesis cannon was not just a weapon. It was a statement. It was proof of everything the Hegemony had tried to hide for 300 years. Sarah watched the energy readings climb on her console and remembered the day she first learned the truth about humanity's history. She had been a young officer then, stationed on a survey ship in the outer reaches of the solar system. They had found something buried beneath the ice of a distant moon, something ancient, something human, and that discovery had changed everything. "Genesis cannon at 70% charge," Arya reported. "Enemy fleet is attempting to reform their attack formation." "Let them try," Sarah said. "It will not help." Outside the Argonaut, the Hegemony fleet was in chaos. 34 of their ships had already been destroyed. The rest were scrambling to understand what was happening. Their weapons could not track the ancient frigate. Their shields could not stop its attacks. Everything they knew about human technology was wrong. On the Dominion command ship, High Admiral was shouting orders. His 4 arms waved frantically as he tried to organize his fleet. 300 years ago, he had been a junior officer during the first invasion. He had watched the Hegemony's greatest armada broken by a handful of human ships. Ships that used technology the Hegemony could not explain or counter. After that defeat, the Hegemony had spent 50 years trying to understand what had happened. They had studied the wreckage of their own fleet. They had captured human prisoners and questioned them, but they found nothing. The humans who knew the secret had disappeared. Their ships had vanished. All records had been erased. It was as if the technology had never existed. The Hegemony had eventually concluded that the advanced human ships had been destroyed in the battle. They decided that the threat was over. They sealed all records of the first invasion and pretended it never happened. They waited 250 years before trying again. They had been wrong. The ships had not been destroyed. The humans who knew the secret had not died. They had simply been waiting. "Admiral," tactical officer shouted, "we are detecting a massive energy buildup in the human vessel. Power levels are exceeding our sensor capabilities." Felt cold fear run through his body. He knew what that energy buildup meant. He had seen it before. "All ships," he commanded, "full retreat now." But it was too late. The Argonaut released the Genesis cannon. A pulse of brilliant white energy erupted from the ship and expanded outward in all directions. It moved faster than any conventional weapon. It washed over the Hegemony fleet like a wave washing over sand. The pulse did not destroy the enemy ships. It did something worse. It disabled them. Every ship caught in the pulse went dark. Their weapons stopped working. Their engines failed. Their shields collapsed. 500 warships became 500 pieces of drifting metal. On the bridge of the Dominion command ship, watched his displays go black one by one. Emergency lighting flickered on, casting everything in a dim red glow. The great warship that had brought him to Earth was now completely powerless. "What happened?" his tactical officer asked in a trembling voice. "The Genesis cannon," replied. His voice was hollow with despair. "It creates an energy pulse that disrupts all technology within its range. Our entire fleet has been neutralized." "But how? Our ships are shielded against electromagnetic attacks." "This is not electromagnetic. It is something else entirely, something we do not understand, something humans should not have." On the Argonaut, Sarah watched the results of the Genesis cannon with satisfaction. The weapon was exhausting. It would take hours to recharge, but it had done its job. The Hegemony fleet was helpless. "All enemy ships have been disabled," Arya confirmed. "No power signatures detected. Life support on enemy vessels appears to be functioning on emergency reserves only." "Good," Sarah said. "We do not want them to die, not yet. We need them to deliver a message." She turned to Michael. "Take us closer to the command ship. I want to speak with directly." The Argonaut glided through the drifting wreckage of the Hegemony fleet. It passed by darkened destroyers and silent cruisers. Alien crews pressed their faces against viewports, watching the ancient human ship pass. Their eyes were filled with fear. Admiral watched from the bridge of the Defender. His own fleet had been outside the range of the Genesis cannon. They were still fully operational, but he had no intention of interfering. Whatever was happening, whatever that mysterious ship was, understood that he was witnessing something historic. "Sir, are you seeing this?" Lieutenant Park whispered. "That single frigate just disabled the entire enemy fleet." "I see it," replied. "I just do not believe it." "Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the Argonaut. They are requesting a link to our global communication network. They want to broadcast something to all of Earth." Considered for a moment. He did not know who Commander Vance was. He did not understand the technology she commanded, but she had just saved humanity from extinction. That had earned her some trust. "Grant the request." On Earth, every screen flickered. Every broadcast was interrupted. Billions of people stopped what they were doing and watched as a face appeared. It was a woman with gray-streaked hair and eyes that had seen too much. She wore an unfamiliar uniform with a symbol on the shoulder that no one recognized. "People of Earth," Sarah began. "My name is Commander Sarah Vance. What I am about to tell you will be difficult to believe, but it is the truth, a truth that has been hidden from you for 300 years. She paused, gathering her thoughts. "Humanity did not develop space travel on our own. 2,000 years ago, our ancestors were contacted by an advanced alien civilization called the Architects. The Architects were dying. Their species was nearly extinct. They chose humanity to carry on their legacy. They gave us their technology. They gave us their knowledge. They made us their heirs." Across the world, people listened in stunned silence. For 500 years, humanity used that technology to build an empire among the stars. We colonized hundreds of worlds. We became one of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. But we were not alone. The Hegemony saw us as a threat. They did not want a new power rising to challenge their control. So they attacked. Sarah's expression hardened. The First War was brutal. The Hegemony came with overwhelming force just as they did today, but our technology was superior. We defeated them. We drove them back. We made them promise to never return, and then we made a terrible decision. She looked down, pain visible on her face. Our leaders believed that the architect technology was too dangerous. They feared it would eventually destroy us, so they decided to hide it. They sealed away the ships. They erased the records. They used special technology to block memories from the entire human population. Within a generation, no one remembered that we had ever been anything more than primitives just learning to reach the stars. Doctor appeared beside Sarah on the screen. The engineer looked exhausted but determined. "I know this sounds impossible," said, "but the proof is all around you. Have you ever wondered why human technology advanced so quickly over the past few centuries? Why we sometimes make discoveries that seem to come from nowhere? It is because the knowledge is still inside us. The memory blocks are imperfect. The truth keeps trying to break through." Sarah continued. "A small group of us chose to remember. We could not stop our leaders from hiding the truth, but we refused to let it die completely. We put ourselves in cryogenic sleep, along with the Argonaut and a few other ships. We programmed our systems to wake us if the Hegemony ever returned. We hoped they never would. We were wrong." She stepped closer to the camera. "The fleet you see drifting helplessly in space is the same Hegemony that tried to destroy us 300 years ago. They have come to finish what they started, but I am here to tell you that they will fail, just as they failed before. Because humanity is not the primitive species they believe us to be. We are the heirs of the architects. We are the children of a civilization that spanned the stars. And it is time for us to remember who we are." The broadcast ended. Silence fell across the world. Then slowly the questions began. On the Argonaut, Sarah closed the communication channel and turned to her crew. "That was the easy part," she said. "Now comes the hard part. We need to speak with." The Argonaut positioned itself directly in front of the disabled Dominion command ship. Sarah activated the ship's short-range communication system. Even with their main power disabled, the enemy vessel would be able to receive the signal. "Hi, Admiral," Sarah said. "I know you can hear me. Do you remember me?" There was a long pause. Then's voice came through the speakers. It was rough and tired. "I remember you, Commander Vance. I remember watching you destroy my flagship 300 years ago. I thought you died in that battle." "I did not die. I waited. I waited for this day." "To humiliate me again?" "No, to give you one final chance." Laughed bitterly. "A chance? You have disabled my entire fleet. You have revealed secrets that will shake the Hegemony to its core. What chance can you possibly offer me?" "The chance to leave peacefully. Take your fleet and go. Tell the Hegemony what you saw today. Tell them that humanity remembers. Tell them that if they ever come back, we will not be so merciful." "Merciful?" His voice rose with anger. "You call this mercy? You have destroyed my career. You have destroyed my reputation. The Hegemony will never trust me again." "That is not my concern. My concern is protecting my people. You came here to commit genocide, Admiral. You came here to burn our world and murder billions. The fact that you are still alive is the only mercy I am willing to offer. Take it or do not. The choice is yours." There was silence on the other end. Sarah waited patiently. She knew. She had studied him before the first invasion. He was proud and cruel, but he was also practical. He understood when he was beaten. "Very well," finally said. "We will leave. But do not think this is over. The Hegemony will not forget this defeat. They will come back. And next time they will bring more than 500 ships. Then we will be ready. We have been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Do you really think we only have one ship?" Did not respond. "Arya," Sarah said, "begin restoring power to the enemy fleet. Engines and life support only. Keep their weapons disabled until they are outside the solar system." "Understood, Commander." Slowly, the lights began to come back on across the Hegemony fleet. Ships that had been drifting helplessly started to regain control. One by one, they turned away from Earth and began the long journey back to Hegemony space. Admiral watched them go. He still did not fully understand what had happened, but he understood enough to know that the universe had changed today. "Admiral," Lieutenant Park said, "the Argonaut is requesting permission to dock with the Defender. Commander Vance wants to speak with you in person." "Permission granted." An hour later, Sarah Vance walked onto the bridge of the Defender. She looked even older and more tired in person than she had on the broadcast, but her eyes were sharp and alert, taking in everything around her. "Admiral," she said, extending her hand, "thank you for trusting us." Shook her hand. "I did not have much choice. You saved us all." "We saved ourselves. You and your fleet were prepared to die defending Earth. That courage matters. It matters more than you know." Gestured for her to sit down. There were so many questions he wanted to ask. He started with the most important one. "Is it true, everything you said in the broadcast, about the architects and the hidden history?" "Every word. I know it is a lot to accept." "It is impossible to accept. You are asking us to believe that everything we know about our own history is a lie." "Not a lie," Sarah said gently. "A forgotten truth. There is a difference. The people who hid this knowledge believed they were protecting humanity. They were wrong, but they were not evil." "Where are they now, the ones who made that decision?" "Dead, all of them. They did not put themselves in. They stayed behind to make sure the memory blocks held. They lived out their natural lives and died, keeping the secret to the end." Shook his head slowly. "And now you want to undo what they did. You want to restore all that lost knowledge." "I want to give humanity a choice. The technology of the architects is stored in the Argonaut's computers. The knowledge is there, waiting, but we cannot force people to accept it. This has to be humanity's decision." "What would happen if we accepted it? If we took back this technology?" Sarah smiled. It was the first time he'd seen her smile. "We would become what we were always meant to be, not just a species struggling to survive among the stars, a civilization, a power, a force that even the Hegemony would have to respect." "And if we refused?" "Then we would continue as we are. We would face whatever comes next with the technology we have now. It would be harder. The Hegemony will return eventually, and they will be better prepared. But it would still be humanity's choice to make." Stood up and walked to the viewport. Outside, the stars stretched endlessly into the darkness. Somewhere out there, the Hegemony fleet was retreating. Somewhere out there, countless alien civilizations were watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. "The United Earth Council will need to make this decision," said. "It is too big for any one person." "I agree. Take all the time you need. The Argonaut and her crew will remain here to answer questions. The technology is not going anywhere." Sarah stood up to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. "Admiral, there is one more thing you should know. The Argonaut is not the only ship we hid. There are others, dozens of them, hidden in places all across the solar system, waiting to be awakened." Stared at her. "Dozens." The people who wanted to preserve the truth knew that one ship might not be enough. They prepared for every possibility. Whatever humanity decides, we have options. She left the bridge, remained at the viewport staring out at the stars. The universe looked different now, bigger, more dangerous, but also full of possibility. On Earth, the debates had already begun. People argued in homes and offices and public squares. Some believed Commander Vance's story. Some thought it was an elaborate hoax. Some were terrified, some were excited, but everyone agreed on one thing: nothing would ever be the same again. In the Luna Historical Preserve, 3 more ships began to stir. Their systems hummed to life as signals from the Argonaut reached them. Crews that had been asleep for 3 centuries started the slow process of awakening. The ancient fleet was waking up. And across the galaxy, in the great council chambers of the Hegemony, urgent messages were being sent. The humans had done it again. They had revealed their true power. They had proven that the defeats of 300 years ago had not been a mistake. The Hegemony had a problem, and this time they would need a very different solution. High Admiral sat alone in his darkened quarters as his ship limped through space. His fleet of 500 had been reduced to helpless wrecks by a single vessel. His invasion had become the greatest military disaster in Hegemony history. But was thinking beyond his own failure. He was thinking about what Commander Vance had said, about dozens of ships hidden across the human solar system, about technology that the Hegemony still could not understand or counter. If the humans had kept such secrets hidden for 300 years, what else might they be hiding? What other surprises were waiting in the depths of their civilization? The answer, realized, was something the Hegemony had never truly faced before: uncertainty. For 10,000 years, the Hegemony had dominated the galaxy through superior numbers and firepower. They had crushed hundreds of young civilizations. They had never met an enemy they could not eventually overwhelm. But humanity was different. Humanity had secrets. Humanity had survived when they should have died. Humanity kept coming back, stronger each time. For the first time in his long life, wondered if the Hegemony had finally met its match. And that terrified him more than any weapon ever could. 3 weeks had passed since the Battle of Earth. The Hegemony fleet had retreated beyond the solar system. The ancient ships from the Luna Preserve were fully awake, and humanity was tearing itself apart trying to decide what to do next. Sarah Vance stood before the United Earth Council in their great assembly hall in Geneva. 200 representatives from every nation on Earth stared at her with a mixture of wonder and suspicion. She had spoken for hours, explaining the history that had been hidden. Now came the hard part. "Commander Vance," said Secretary General, "your story is extraordinary, but many here still have doubts. You are asking us to accept that our entire civilization is built on a lie." "Not a lie," Sarah replied patiently. She had said this many times already. "A forgotten truth, and I am not asking you to take my word for it. Come to the Argonaut, see the technology for yourself. Examine the records, test everything. I have nothing to hide." A Russian delegate stood up. His name was, and he had been one of the loudest voices of doubt. "Even if what you say is true, why should we trust you? You say a small group chose to remember, but who gave you the right to make that choice? Who decided that you would be the keepers of this secret?" "No one gave us the right," Sarah admitted. "We took it. We believed the decision to forget was wrong. We believed humanity had the right to know its own history. Were we right to make that choice? I do not know, but the choice has already been made. The secret is out. The question now is what humanity will do with it." The chamber erupted in argument. Delegates shouted at each other across the floor. Some wanted to embrace the architect technology immediately. Others wanted to destroy it. Most were simply confused, trying to understand a universe that had become much more complicated overnight. Secretary General called for order. When the chamber finally quieted, she spoke. "Commander Vance, let us set aside the question of the past for now. Tell us about the future. You said the Hegemony will return. What should we expect?" Sarah nodded. This was the question that really mattered. The Hegemony is not a single civilization. It is a coalition of 12 species, each with their own interests and agendas. Right now, they are in chaos. High Admiral's defeat has humiliated the Dominion species, who have led the Hegemony for thousands of years. The other species are questioning their leadership. "Does that mean they will not attack again?" asked a delegate from Brazil. "No, it means they will take time to reorganize. My best estimate is that we have between 1 and 5 years before they return, but when they do come back, they will be prepared for us. They will have studied the Genesis canon. They will have developed countermeasures. They will bring a larger fleet with new weapons specifically designed to fight us." The chamber fell silent. The brief hope that the danger was over faded away. "However," Sarah continued, "we have advantages they do not expect. The Argonaut is not alone. We have 12 more ships hidden in the solar system. All of them are equipped with architect technology. Together, they form a fleet powerful enough to defend Earth against anything the Hegemony can send." 12 ships, scoffed. "They sent 500. Even with your advanced technology, how can 12 ships defeat a larger force?" "Because the Hegemony relies on numbers. They have never faced an enemy with truly superior technology. The ships we have can move faster, hit harder, and survive longer than anything they possess. In a straight fight, one of our ships is worth 50 of theirs." "Then why do you need us?" asked Secretary General. "If your technology is so superior, why come to the Council at all?" Sarah paused before answering. This was the crucial moment. "Because technology alone is not enough. The ships we have are 300 years old. Their crews are skilled, but there are fewer than 500 of us in total. We can defend Earth for now, but we cannot win a long war. For that, we need humanity to join us. We need to share our knowledge. We need to build new ships and train new crews. We need to become what we were meant to be. And if we refuse, then we will still defend you. We made a promise 300 years ago to protect humanity. We will keep that promise. But understand what refusing means. It means staying weak while our enemies grow stronger. It means hopping 12 ships will be enough forever. It means leaving our fate in the hands of others." The debate continued for hours. In the end, no decision was reached. The Council agreed to send a delegation to inspect the Argonaut. They would examine the technology and the records. Then they would vote. Sarah accepted this outcome. She had not expected immediate agreement. Humanity needed time to adjust to its new reality. She just hoped the Hegemony would give them enough time. Far away, in the central regions of Hegemony space, a very different meeting was taking place. The 12 lords, the supreme rulers of the coalition, had gathered for the first time in over a century. They met in the Chamber of Unity, a vast space station that orbited a dying star. High Admiral stood before them in chains. The Dominion had been humiliated by his defeat. As punishment, the other lords had demanded his presence as a prisoner rather than a participant. The lord of the species spoke first. There were creatures, their voices a harsh clicking sound that translators rendered into speech. 500 ships, the largest fleet we have ever sent against a single world, and it was stopped by one vessel. One, how do you explain this? The humans have technology we do not understand, replied. He had stopped trying to defend himself. He knew his fate was sealed. The same technology they used 300 years ago, we thought it was destroyed. We were wrong. You were wrong, the Lord of the corrected. They were reptilian, their scales gleaming in the dim light. The Dominion assured us that the human threat was eliminated. The Dominion told us it was safe to return. The Dominion lied. We did not lie, said. We were deceived. The humans hid their true capabilities. They have been hiding them for centuries, waiting for us to return. Which makes them more dangerous than we ever realized, said the Lord of the. They were silicon-based, their bodies glowing with internal heat. These are not primitive creatures stumbling into space. These are survivors of the architect legacy. We should have recognized this long ago. The mention of the architects caused a ripple of unease through the chamber. Even after millions of years, the architects cast a long shadow over galactic history. They had been the most advanced civilization ever known. Their technology had shaped the galaxy. and then they had vanished, leaving only mysteries behind. The Lord of the Dominion, a massive figure named, finally spoke. He was ruler, and his shame at the defeat was obvious. The question is not what happened. The question is what we do now. The humans have revealed their true nature. They have weapons we cannot counter. If we do nothing, they will grow stronger. Eventually, they might become a threat to the hegemony itself. Then we destroy them completely, said the Lord. No more limited attacks, no more restraint. We gather every ship we have and burn their entire system to ash. That would take years to organize, the Lord pointed out. And if the humans have hidden surprises in their own system, they might have hidden them elsewhere. We could be walking into another trap. Then what do you suggest? They demanded. The Lord raised one glowing limb. I suggest we consider alternatives to direct military action. The humans have shown they can defeat our fleets, but fleets are not our only weapon. Explain, Lord commanded. The humans have just learned a terrible truth about their own history. Their society is in turmoil. They are divided about whether to embrace their heritage or reject it. We can use that division. You are talking about infiltration, said the Lord, spies, sabotage. I am talking about strategy. We cannot defeat the humans in open battle, not yet, but we can weaken them from within. We can encourage their doubts. We can turn them against each other, and when they are sufficiently weakened, we strike. The Lords considered this proposal. It was not the honorable approach. The hegemony prided itself on direct confrontation, on overwhelming force, but overwhelming force had failed. There is another option, Lord said slowly, one that none of us have mentioned. What option? Negotiation, peace. The chamber erupted in outrage. The Lords shouted over each other, declaring that peace with humans was impossible, unthinkable, a betrayal of everything the hegemony stood for. Lord waited for the noise to die down. I am not suggesting we make friends with them. I am suggesting we buy time. We negotiate a temporary peace. We use that peace to study their technology, to develop countermeasures, to prepare for the eventual war. Let them think they have won. Let them grow complacent. And then, when we are ready, we crush them completely. The Lords fell silent, considering this approach. It is deceptive, the Lord said finally, but it might work. The humans have no reason to trust us, but they also have no desire for continued war. They might accept peace if we offer it. And while they celebrate their victory, we prepare for their destruction, the Lord added. It is not honorable, but it is effective. One by one, the Lords agreed to the plan. They would send envoys to Earth. They would offer peace and recognition. They would make the humans believe the threat was over. And in the background, they would begin preparing for the true war to come. Listen to this with a heavy heart. He had fought humans twice now. He had lost twice. He knew something the Lords did not seem to understand. The humans were not fools. If the hegemony came offering peace, they would know it was a trap. They would smile and shake hands and sign treaties, and all the while they would be preparing their own countermeasures. The war between humanity and the hegemony was not ending. It was just entering a new phase, a phase of shadows and deception, a phase where the battlefield would be politics and intelligence rather than fleets and weapons. And in that kind of war, was not sure which side would win. On Earth, the Council's inspection team had arrived at the Argonaut. They were led by Dr. Ming, a physicist from Beijing, and included scientists, military officers, and political advisors from a dozen nations. They spent 3 days aboard the ancient ship, examining everything Commander Vance had promised to show them. The technology they found was beyond anything they had imagined. This power core, Doctor said, staring at a device that seemed to glow with an inner light. It is producing energy through a process I cannot even identify. It is not fusion. It is not antimatter. It is something else entirely. Smiled. She had been assigned to guide the scientific team. The architects called it crystalline resonance. They discovered that certain crystal structures, when properly aligned, can tap into the fundamental energy of spacetime itself. "That is impossible," said one of the other scientists. "Spacetime is not a power source. It is just the fabric of the universe." The architects thought differently. They believed the universe itself was alive with energy, waiting to be harvested. This technology is the result of that belief. Doctor shook his head in wonder. If we could understand this, if we could replicate it, the implications are staggering. Unlimited clean energy, engines that could travel between stars in days instead of years, weapons that— He stopped himself. Weapons that could defeat the hegemony, finished for him. Yes, that is the point. On another part of the ship, Admiral was inspecting the weapons systems with Lieutenant Torres. "The Genesis cannon is our most powerful weapon," Torres explained, "but it takes hours to recharge after each use. In a prolonged battle, we rely on these." He pointed to a bank of strange devices that looked like nothing had ever seen. "We call them resonance beams. They work on a similar principle to the power core. They disrupt the molecular bonds of any material they hit." "You mean they disintegrate things?" "Essentially. Armor, shields, hull plating. Nothing can resist them. The hegemony's defenses are designed to stop energy weapons and physical projectiles. They have no counter to resonance technology." Frowned. If these weapons are so effective, why did the hegemony not develop similar technology after the First War? They had 300 years to study what hit them. "Because they do not understand the principles behind it. The architects were millions of years more advanced than the hegemony. Their technology is based on a completely different understanding of physics. It would take the hegemony centuries more to even begin to grasp how it works." "But they will eventually," said. "Yes, eventually. That is why we cannot waste the advantage we have now. Every year we delay is a year for them to catch up." The inspection lasted a full week. By the end, even the most skeptical members of the team were convinced. The technology was real. The history was true. Humanity had once been something greater, and it could be again. But convincing the inspection team was one thing. Convincing all of humanity was another. Back on Earth, protests had erupted in dozens of cities. Some people demanded that the architect technology be shared immediately. Others insisted it should be destroyed. Religious groups declared it was the work of demons. Conspiracy theorists claimed it was all an elaborate hoax to control the population. Sarah watched the news feeds with growing concern. Time was running out. Every day that humanity spent fighting itself was a day the hegemony could use to prepare. Then the message arrived. "Commander Vance," Arya said, "we are receiving a transmission from outside the solar system. It appears to be from the hegemony." Sarah felt a chill run through her. "Put it through." A face appeared on the screen. It was not. This was a Dominion female, her gray skin smoother and her manner more refined than any warrior. "I am ambassador of the Dominion," the figure said. "I come bearing a message of peace from the 12 lords of the hegemony." Sarah kept her expression neutral. "I am listening. The hegemony recognizes that our recent conflict with humanity was a mistake. We did not understand your true nature. We did not know you were heirs to the architects. Now that we understand, we wish to make amends. We propose a formal peace treaty between our peoples, an end to hostilities, a new beginning." Sarah said nothing. "We ask only for a meeting," Ambassador continued. "A chance to discuss terms. We will come unarmed with a single diplomatic vessel. Surely, after all the blood that has been shed, this is worth trying." Sarah finally spoke. "I will relay your message to the United Earth Council. They will decide whether to accept your proposal. We appreciate your consideration. We await your response." The transmission ended. Sarah sat alone in the silence, thinking. The hegemony was offering peace. On the surface, it seemed like a miracle, but Sarah had been fighting these enemies for too long to believe in miracles. This was not an ending. It was a new kind of battle, and humanity was about to discover that the universe could be even more dangerous when it pretended to be friendly. She picked up her communicator and called Admiral. "Admiral, we need to talk. The war just got a lot more complicated." The Hegemony's offer of peace divided humanity more than any debate about ancient technology. Some saw it as a chance to avoid further conflict. Others saw it as an obvious trap. The United Earth Council argued for weeks while the universe held its breath. Sarah Vance stood in her quarters aboard the Argonaut, looking at a photograph that had survived 300 years of cryogenic sleep. It showed a younger version of herself standing with a group of people. Her original crew, her friends. Most of them were gone now, lost in the first war against the Hegemony. "You are troubled," Arya said. The AI's voice was soft, almost concerned. "The Council is going to accept the peace offer," Sarah replied. "I can see it coming. They want to believe the war is over. And you do not believe it. I know the Hegemony. They do not surrender. They do not make peace with species they consider inferior. This offer is a strategy, not a surrender." "Then why not tell the Council directly?" Sarah sighed. "Because I have no proof, just instinct and experience. And right now humanity wants to believe in peace. They are tired of fear. They are tired of the constant threat. If I push too hard, they will stop listening to me entirely." The door to her quarters opened. Michael entered, his face grave. "Sarah, we have a problem, a big one." "What happened?" "One of our hidden ships has been discovered. The UES Guardian, the one we concealed in the asteroid belt. Someone leaked its location to the press. The Council is demanding we reveal the locations of all the other ships." Sarah closed her eyes. This was exactly what she had feared. The secret fleet was humanity's ultimate insurance policy. If the Hegemony knew where all the ships were hidden, they could plan to neutralize them before any future attack. "Who leaked the information?" "We do not know yet, but there are factions on Earth who believe we are hiding too much. They want full transparency. They say humanity has a right to know about all the ships." "Humanity has a right to survive," Sarah said sharply. "If we reveal everything, we give the Hegemony a blueprint for defeating us." "I know, but try explaining that to people who have just learned their entire history was hidden from them. Trust is not exactly abundant right now." Sarah thought quickly. The situation was spiraling out of control. She needed to do something to regain the initiative. "Arrange a meeting with Secretary General, private. Tonight, I have an idea." Later that evening, Sarah met with in a secure conference room in Geneva. The Secretary General looked exhausted. The past few weeks had aged her considerably. "Commander Vance, I assume you are here about the leaked ship location." "Partly, but I am also here about the peace offer. You are going to accept it, are you not?" Hesitated, then nodded. "The Council votes tomorrow. The majority will support accepting the Hegemony's proposal. The people want peace. After centuries of struggling to survive in space, they have finally encountered a threat they cannot ignore. They want to believe it can be resolved through diplomacy." "And you, what do you believe?" "I believe we have no good options. If we accept peace, we might be walking into a trap. If we refuse, we guarantee continued conflict. Either way, humanity is at risk." Sarah leaned forward. What if there was a third option, a way to accept the peace while still preparing for the worst? "I am listening." "The Hegemony wants to send an ambassador to Earth. Let them come. Sign whatever treaties they offer. Make a show of trusting them completely. But behind the scenes, we accelerate our preparations. We bring more ships online. We train more crews. We build a fleet that can defend against any betrayal." "You want us to deceive them." "I want us to survive. The Hegemony is already deceiving us. They are using this peace offer to buy time for themselves. I am suggesting we do the same." Was quiet for a long moment. The council would never approve this openly. Too many members genuinely believe in the peace process. "Then do not tell them. Some things have to be done quietly. Some things have to be protected from politics." "You are asking me to lie to my own people." "I am asking you to protect them. There is a difference." The Secretary General stood and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of Geneva sparkled in the darkness. Millions of people going about their lives, unaware of the decisions being made in rooms like this one. "If I do this," said slowly, "and the hegemony turns out to be sincere, I will have undermined humanity's first real chance at peace with an alien civilization. And if they are not sincere, you will have saved us all." Turned back to face Sarah. Her expression was resolved. "Tell me what you need." Over the following months, a strange dual reality emerged. On the surface, humanity embraced peace. The hegemony ambassador arrived to great fanfare. Treaties were signed. Cultural exchanges were planned. News programs showed smiling alien faces and talked about a new era of cooperation. But beneath the surface, other things were happening. The hidden fleet was brought to full readiness. New ships were constructed in secret facilities on the dark side of the moon. Training programs produced thousands of personnel capable of operating architect technology. Defensive platforms were installed around Earth under the guise of civilian infrastructure. Sarah Vance coordinated all of it, working from the shadows while the world celebrated peace. Ambassador was intelligent and charming. She gave speeches about mutual understanding. She attended state dinners and laughed at human jokes. She made friends among Earth's elite. And every night, she sent encrypted reports back to the hegemony about everything she observed. The hegemony was doing exactly what Sarah expected. They were studying humanity's defenses. They were mapping strategic locations. They were looking for weaknesses to exploit when the time came. But they were also being studied. Dr. Ming, now fully aware of the deception, had been tasked with analyzing everything the ambassador revealed about hegemony technology and society. Every casual comment, every diplomatic document, every piece of data was collected and examined. "The hegemony is more fragile than they appear," reported during a secret meeting. "The 12 lords are constantly competing with each other. The different species have deep resentments. The Dominion has held power for, but their position is weaker than it has ever been." "Can we exploit that?" Sarah asked. "Potentially. If we can identify the right pressure points, we might be able to turn the hegemony against itself, make them too busy fighting each other to threaten us. That is a dangerous game. If it fails, we would face a unified enemy that knows we tried to manipulate them." "True, but it might be our best option for long-term survival. We cannot fight the entire hegemony forever. Eventually, we need to change the balance of power." Sarah nodded. "Keep studying, find those pressure points. When the time comes, we need to be ready." 6 months after the peace treaty was signed, the first crack appeared in the facade. A human cargo ship disappeared near the edge of the solar system. The hegemony, any involvement. They expressed concern and offered to help investigate, but Sarah's intelligence network told a different story. The ship had been taken by not officially of course. They had used intermediaries, pirates they secretly funded. They wanted to examine human technology up close. They wanted to find weaknesses. Sarah did not reveal what she knew. Instead, she used the incident as an excuse to enhance patrols near the solar system's borders. More ships, more sensors, a defensive perimeter. 2 months later, another incident. This time, a research station detected strange readings from deep space. Someone was scanning the solar system with advanced sensors. Someone was mapping everything. Again, the hegemony involvement. Again, Sarah quietly increased defenses. The pattern continued. Small provocations, mysterious incidents, always deniable, always explained away. But each one revealed a little more about the hegemony's true intentions. By the end of the first year of peace, Sarah had accumulated enough evidence to prove that the hegemony was preparing for war, but she did not reveal it. Not yet. The preparations were not complete. Humanity needed more time. And then everything changed. It started with a routine patrol near Jupiter. A human destroyer detected an anomaly in one of the planet's moons. Something was hidden beneath the surface, something that should not have been there. The patrol commander sent a probe to investigate. What it found explanation. There was a structure buried beneath the ice of Europa, not a hegemony structure, not a human structure, something far older, something that predated both civilizations. An architect facility. Sarah received the report and immediately locked down all information about the discovery. Only a handful of people knew what had been found. It had to stay that way. "Arya, what can you tell me about this facility?" Sarah asked as she studied the probe's images. "Cross-referencing with our records. The design matches architect construction patterns. However, this facility does not appear in any of our databases. It was not part of the original gift to humanity." So there were things the architects kept secret even from their chosen heirs. "It appears so. Commander, the facility seems to be intact. If we could access it, we might discover technologies even more advanced than what we currently possess." Sarah felt a mixture of excitement and dread. More advanced technology could change everything. It could give humanity an unbeatable advantage, but it could also attract attention they were not ready to handle. What about the hegemony? Could they have detected the same anomaly? Unknown. Their sensors are not as sophisticated as ours, but they have been actively scanning our system. It is possible they will eventually find it. Then we need to get there first, quietly, without anyone knowing. Sarah assembled a team in secret to analyze the technology. Lieutenant Tors for security, Doctor for scientific documentation, and Michael because she trusted him more than anyone else alive. They traveled to Europa aboard a small shuttle, officially listed as a routine supply mission. The facility was located beneath 3 kilometers of ice, accessible only through a fissure that the probe had mapped. What they found inside changed everything. The facility was vast, stretching for kilometers beneath Europa's frozen surface. It was perfectly preserved, as if the architects had left only yesterday. Strange lights activated as they entered, responding to their presence. "This is incredible," whispered. "The technology here, it is generations beyond what we have on the Argonaut." "It is also dangerous," Michael observed. "Look at these markings. These are warning symbols. Whatever this place was built for, the architects did not want it used casually." They explored deeper into the facility, documenting everything. And at the center, they found the purpose of it all. A weapon, or rather, the plans for a weapon, something the architects had designed but never built. The records called it the convergence engine. It was meant to be used only as a last resort, against an enemy that threatened the fabric of reality itself. "What does it do?" Sarah asked. Arya's voice came through their communication devices. "Based on these specifications, the convergence engine manipulates the fundamental forces of the universe. It could be used to seal entire regions of space, making them permanently inaccessible. Or it could be used more aggressively to collapse those regions entirely." "You mean destroy them?" "Effectively. The records indicate that the architects considered this technology too dangerous to deploy. They built this facility to preserve the knowledge without acting on it." Sarah stared at the holographic plans floating before her. This was power beyond anything she had imagined, power to reshape the galaxy, power that no species should possess. "We cannot let the hegemony find this," she said. "We cannot let anyone find this," Michael replied. "Including us. Sarah, this technology. If we used it, would we be any better than the enemies we are fighting?" It was a question Sarah could not answer. They spent days cataloging the facility's contents. Most of it was too advanced to understand immediately. It would take years of study to unlock its secrets. But the convergence engine plans were clear enough. The architects had made sure that part was accessible. When they returned to Earth, Sarah made a decision. She told only Secretary General about the discovery. The convergence engine would remain a secret within a secret, a weapon of absolutely last resort. But even as she made that decision, she knew something had changed. The universe was bigger and more dangerous than she had realized. The war with the hegemony was important, but it was not the only threat humanity might face. The architects had built that weapon for a reason. They had expected to need it, and that meant there were dangers out there that even they had feared. Humanity was stepping onto a larger stage, and the question now was whether they were ready for what that stage held. Back on Earth, Ambassador continued her diplomatic mission, unaware of what had been found beneath Europa's ice. The hegemony continued their secret preparations, unaware that humanity was preparing just as quietly. The peace held, but everyone knew it was only a matter of time before the truth could no longer be hidden. And when that moment came, the universe would learn what humanity was truly capable of. Sarah stood aboard the Argonaut, watching Earth turn slowly in the viewport. Her home, her people, everything she had fought to protect. "The storm is coming," she said quietly. "Yes," Arya replied, "but perhaps for the first time we are ready for it." Sarah was not sure about that, but she was sure of one thing. Whatever happened next, humanity would face it together, and that was worth more than all the technology in the universe. The peace lasted 18 months, 18 months of smiles and handshakes and treaties, 18 months of humanity rebuilding while pretending to trust, 18 months of the hegemony studying and planning and preparing. It ended on a Tuesday. Sarah Vance was in her quarters when Arya's voice cut through the silence. "Commander, we have a situation. Multiple hyperspace signatures detected at the edge of the solar system." Sarah was already moving before the AI finished speaking. "How many?" "Initial count shows 800 vessels. Updated count, 1,000. Commander, the count continues to rise." By the time Sarah reached the Argonaut's bridge, the tactical display showed the full scope of what was coming. 1,500 warships had emerged from hyperspace. They were not coming from hegemony space. They were coming from all directions at once. The enemy had positioned their fleet in advance, hiding in deep space, waiting for the signal to strike. "They were planning this from the beginning," Michael said. His voice was tight with anger. "The peace was a lie, every moment of it." "We knew that," Sarah replied. "We just hoped we would have more time." Admiral's face appeared on the communication screen. He looked old and tired, but his eyes were sharp. "Commander Vance, I assume you have seen the enemy fleet." "I have seen it. The hegemony brought 3 times the force they sent last time. They are not making the same mistake twice." "Can we defeat them? Your ships combined with our fleet?" Sarah considered the question carefully. Over the past 18 months, humanity had built 12 new ships using architect technology. Combined with the original 13, that gave them a fleet of 25 advanced warships. The Earth Defense Force had expanded to 90 conventional vessels. Against 1,500 enemy ships, it would be the most unbalanced battle in human history. "We can hurt them," Sarah said finally. "We can hurt them badly, but I will not lie to you, Admiral. This will be the hardest fight we have ever faced." "Then we make it count. Whatever happens, we make sure they remember this day." All across the solar system, humanity prepared for war. Defense platforms activated. Civilian ships fled to protected zones. The newly constructed fleet emerged from hidden bases and joined formation with the Argonaut. 25 ships that represented humanity's greatest achievement, surrounded by 90 conventional warships whose crews knew they were outmatched but refused to run. 115 ships against 1,500. On Earth, Secretary General addressed the world. Her voice was calm despite the fear she must have felt. Citizens of Earth, the Hegemony has broken its promise of peace. They have sent a fleet to destroy us, but we are not the same species they fought 18 months ago. We have learned the truth about who we are. We have built new ships. We have prepared for this day, and we will not go quietly. In homes and offices and public squares, humanity listened. Some prayed, some cried, but many felt something else, a strange pride, a defiance they did not fully understand. The truth about their heritage had changed them. They knew now that they were descendants of greatness. They were ready to prove it. The Hegemony fleet advanced slowly and carefully. High Admiral was no longer in command. He had been executed after his failure 18 months ago. The new commander was Fleet Master of the species. He was methodical and cautious. He would not underestimate humans the way he had. All ships will maintain formation, ordered. We advance as one. No individual attacks, no heroics. We crush them through overwhelming force. His tactical officer acknowledged the command. Fleet Master, human vessels are forming a defensive line near the third planet. They appear to have approximately 100 ships. 100 against 1,500. The mathematics are simple. Begin the final approach. The two fleets faced each other across the void. Humans on one side, aliens on the other. The fate of a civilization hung in the balance. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Argonaut and addressed her fleet. All ships, this is Commander Vance. You all know what we are facing. You all know the odds, but I want to remind you of something. 300 years ago, our ancestors faced an enemy just as powerful. They won. Not because they had more ships, not because they were luckier. They won because they refused to accept defeat. They found a way when there was no way. That is who we are. That is what humanity does. Today, we prove that again. She nodded to Tors. Weapons hot, all ships. The Hegemony fleet came within range. Energy beams and missiles streaked across space. The battle for Earth had begun. The first hour was chaos. Ships exploded on both sides. The human fleet, guided by architect technology, fought with precision and power that the Hegemony had not anticipated. Resonance beams tore through enemy shields. Crystalline engines allowed human ships to dance around incoming fire. Every human vessel fought like 10 of the enemy. But the numbers were relentless. For every Hegemony ship destroyed, 2 more took its place. The human conventional fleet took the worst of it. Destroyer after destroyer fell, their crews fighting to the last moment. We have lost 30 ships, Michael reported. The conventional fleet is being torn apart. Sarah watched her tactical display with grim determination. The plan was working, but the cost was terrible. They needed more time. They needed the enemy to commit fully to the battle. Fall back, she ordered. All ships fall back toward Earth, draw them in. The human fleet retreated, fighting as they went. The Hegemony pursued, sensing victory. Fleet Master allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. They are running. Increase pursuit speed. Do not let them reach their planet. His tactical officer hesitated. Fleet Master, their advanced ships are falling back in perfect order. This does not look like a retreat. It looks like... Like what? Like a trap. His confidence wavered, but they had come too far to stop now. The humans were clearly losing. Their conventional fleet was almost destroyed. Victory was within reach. Continue the pursuit, all ships. The Hegemony fleet surged forward, hungry for the kill. They did not notice the energy signatures building beneath the ice of several moons. They did not see the defense platforms coming online around Earth. They did not realize that the retreat was leading them exactly where Sarah wanted them. Now, Sarah said. The trap closed. The Genesis cannons fired. Not one, but three. Hidden stations on Luna, Europa, and Titan unleashed their payloads simultaneously. The massive pulses of energy converged on the Hegemony fleet from three directions at once. 1,200 enemy ships went dark instantly. Their weapons stopped. Their shields fell. Their engines died. In a single moment, the most powerful fleet the Hegemony had ever assembled became a drifting graveyard. Only 300 ships at the rear of the formation escaped the pulses. They were too far away, outside the effective range, but they were still enough to destroy the battered human fleet. Fleet Master stared at his displays in horror. 1,200 ships disabled. The greatest disaster in Hegemony military history, and the humans were not finished. The surviving human ships turned and attacked. 25 advanced vessels plus 60 conventional survivors against 300 panicking enemy ships. The odds had finally shifted. All ships, this is Commander Vance. No retreat, no mercy, finish them. The humans fought with fury born of desperation. The Hegemony ships, demoralized and disorganized, could not mount an effective defense. One by one they fell. Some tried to flee. None escaped. When it was over, the space around Earth was filled with wreckage. Human and alien ships tumbled together in the cold void. But the Hegemony fleet was gone. Destroyed or disabled, every single ship. On the bridge of the Argonaut, Sarah allowed herself to breathe. Arya status report. Human casualties are significant. We have lost 47 ships, including 39 conventional vessels. Approximately 4,000 personnel killed in action. However, the Hegemony fleet has been completely neutralized. Earth is secure. 4,000 dead. Sarah closed her eyes and let the weight of that number settle on her shoulders. 4,000 people who would never go home. 4,000 families who would receive the worst news of their lives. But billions had been saved. Earth would survive. Humanity would continue. Open a channel to all surviving ships, Sarah said. Channel open. This is Commander Vance to the fleet. The battle is over. The Hegemony has been defeated. I know the cost has been terrible. I know we have lost friends and comrades, but I want you to understand what you have achieved today. You have proven that humanity cannot be destroyed. You have shown the universe that we will fight for our home no matter the odds. Be proud. Be proud of who you are and what you have done. The fallen would be proud of you. Across the solar system, survivors wept and cheered and held each other. They had done the impossible. They had faced extinction and won. On Earth, the celebration lasted for days. People danced in the streets. They embraced strangers. They looked up at the stars with new eyes, knowing that they had earned their place among them. But Sarah knew the war was not truly over. The Hegemony had lost their fleet, but their civilization remained. The 12 lords would be meeting right now, trying to understand what had happened, trying to decide what to do next. She needed to give them something to think about. 1 week after the battle, Sarah traveled to Europa. She went alone, accompanied only by Arya. The architect facility waited beneath the ice, unchanged since her first visit. The convergence engine plan still floated in the central chamber, the weapon that could seal or destroy entire regions of space, the weapon the architects had built but never used. Sarah stood before those plans for a long time. Arya, can we broadcast a signal that will reach Hegemony space? Yes, it would take approximately 2 weeks to arrive. Record the following message. She straightened her shoulders and looked directly at the recording device. This message is for the 12 lords of the Hegemony. My name is Sarah Vance. I am the commander of Earth's defense forces. You have now sent 2 fleets to destroy humanity. Both have failed. I am here to tell you that there will not be a third chance. She gestured to the plans behind her. What you see here is called the convergence engine. It is architect technology, more advanced than anything humanity has shown you before. It has the power to seal regions of space permanently, to make entire systems inaccessible forever. I want you to understand what that means." Her voice hardened. "If the hegemony ever attacks Earth again, we will use this technology. We will seal your home systems. We will cut you off from the rest of the galaxy. You will be trapped, isolated, unable to threaten anyone ever again. This is not a bluff. This is not a negotiation. This is a promise." She stepped closer to the camera. "But I am also offering you a choice. Leave us alone. Accept that humanity is not your enemy. Trade with us. Learn from us. Grow with us. The universe is big enough for all of us. We do not have to be enemies. The choice is yours, but choose carefully, because we are the heirs of the architects. We have their knowledge. We have their technology. And we have something they never had. We have survived everything the universe has thrown at us, and we are still here. Think about that before you send another fleet." She ended the recording. Arya sended. "Message sent, Commander. It will reach Hegemony space in 13 days. Sarah looked around the ancient facility one more time. The architects had built this place millions of years ago. They had preserved their most dangerous technology here. Hopping it would never be needed. Now it had served its purpose, not as a weapon, but as a warning, a promise that humanity would never be helpless again. She left the facility and returned to her shuttle. There was still so much work to do, ships to rebuild, crews to train, allies to find. The universe was vast and full of dangers, but it was also full of opportunities. 3 months later, the Hegemony's response arrived. It came in the form of a single ship, carrying a delegation of all 12 lords. They wanted to negotiate. Not a fake peace this time, but a real one. The threat of the convergence engine had shown them that humanity could not be conquered. Their only option was coexistence. Sarah met them aboard the Argonaut. The same ship that had defeated them twice now served as the site of their surrender. Lord of the Dominion spoke for the group. His arrogance was gone, replaced by grudging respect. "We underestimated your species, Commander. We assumed you were primitives who had stumbled upon architect technology. We were wrong. You are something more, something the galaxy has not seen in millions of years." "And what is that?" Sarah asked. "Survivors, adapters. You take what the universe throws at you and find a way to win. The architects chose well when they selected humanity as their heirs." The negotiations took weeks. In the end, a true peace was established. The hegemony would recognize human sovereignty over the solar system. Trade routes would be opened. Technology would be shared. For the first time in history, humanity had a place at the galactic table. But Sarah knew that peace was fragile. The hegemony feared humanity now, and fear could easily turn to hatred. There would be challenges ahead. There would be enemies who did not sign treaties. The universe was not a safe place. Still, humanity had proven something important. They had shown that they could stand against any threat. They had shown that the fire of their ancestors still burned bright. The Argonaut remained in service, joined by a growing fleet of new ships. The ancient frigate that had hidden among museum pieces became the flagship of Earth's new navy. Its crew, the guardians who had slept for 300 years, became teachers and advisors, passing their knowledge to the next generation. Sarah Vance never stopped watching the stars. She knew there were other dangers out there. The architects had feared something powerful enough to require the convergence engine. Someday, humanity might face that same threat. But when that day came, they would be ready. On the anniversary of the battle, Sarah stood before a memorial that had been built to honor the fallen. 4,000 names were carved into black stone, shining in the sunlight. 4,000 lives given so that billions could survive. Admiral stood beside her. He had retired from active duty, but he still came to pay his respects. "Do you think it was worth it?" he asked quietly. "All the secrets, all the deception, all the death?" Sarah considered the question for a long time. I think survival is always worth fighting for, she said finally. The architects understood that. They gave us their legacy because they believed we were worth saving. Our ancestors understood it too. They hid the truth to protect us, even if their methods were wrong. And the people who died in these battles understood it. They gave their lives so that humanity could have a future. She looked up at the sky, where stars were beginning to appear as evening fell. We are part of something bigger now. Not just one species on one planet, but members of a galactic community. Heirs to the greatest civilization that ever existed. That is what they died for. That is what we have to live up to. Nodded slowly. And the hegemony, do you really think the peace will last? Sarah smiled. It was a smile that had seen too much to be entirely optimistic, but still held hope. Maybe, maybe not, but if it does not last, we will be ready. We have learned too much to go back to being blind. We have grown too strong to be victims. Whatever comes next, humanity will face it together. She placed her hand on the memorial, feeling the names of the fallen beneath her fingers. And we will win, because that is what we do. That is who we are. The universe tried to delete us and we refused to disappear. The hegemony sent 500 ships, then 1,500, and we broke them both times. We are humanity. We are the children of the architects. We are survivors. She turned away from the memorial and walked toward the future. Behind her, the stars burned bright, no longer cold and distant. They were waiting, full of danger and wonder and possibility, full of stories yet to be written. And humanity was ready to write them. The ancient frigate had made its presence known. The universe would never forget.
The great hall of the galactic conclave stretched for 3 kilometers in every direction. Its walls were made of living crystal that had grown for 10,000 years. Light from a captured star floated in the ceiling, casting golden rays across the assembled delegates. This was the heart of galactic civilization. This was where the oldest and most powerful species gathered to decide the fate of younger races. Today, they would decide the fate of humanity. Ambassador HFY of the Veloci stood at the central platform. His body was tall and thin, covered in silver scales that caught the light like mirrors. His eyes were large and black, holding the cold intelligence of a species that had ruled the stars for 50,000 years. When he spoke, his voice echoed through the hall and into the minds of every being present. "We have watched them for 200 years, HFY said. "We have studied their history. We have analyzed their behavior, and we have reached a conclusion that cannot be ignored." Around him, the representatives of 11 other species listened. The Crethon, massive beings of stone and moss who communicated through chemical signals. The Synthesis Collective, machine intelligences housed in floating spheres of black metal. The Hegemony, creatures of living light who had existed since before the first stars died. And 8 others, each ancient, each powerful, each convinced of their own wisdom. "Humanity," HFY continued, "is a threat." He waved his hand, and images appeared in the air above him. A blue and green planet spinning in the darkness of space, cities of glass and steel spreading across its surface, ships launching from its atmosphere, crude and primitive but growing more sophisticated with each passing decade. They have been spacefaring for only 200 years. In that time, they have colonized 17 worlds. They have reverse-engineered technology that took us millennia to develop. They adapt faster than any species we have ever encountered. The Crethon delegate released a cloud of purple gas that translated as concern. Their numbers grow quickly as well. Their breeding cycle is remarkably short. Yes, HFY agreed. They can double their population in less than a century. At their current rate of expansion, they will control a significant portion of the Orion Arm within 500 years. Within 2,000 years, they will rival our oldest civilizations in territory and resources. But they are so young. The Hegemony representative flickered. Perhaps they can be guided, taught, brought into the conclave as junior members. HFY's scales rippled with what might have been contempt. I have met their leaders. I have looked into their eyes. They do not wish to be guided. They wish to grow, to spread, to consume. They ask questions that should not be asked. They reach for knowledge that should not be touched. He brought up more images. human scientists dissecting alien technology, human ships probing forbidden regions of space, human philosophers debating the rights of artificial minds, human generals planning wars that had not yet been declared. They are curious, HFY said, making the word sound like a disease. Relentlessly, dangerously curious. They do not accept limits. They do not respect boundaries. They see the universe as a puzzle to be solved rather than a garden to be tended. The Synthesis Collective spoke in its chorus of mechanical voices. We have run projections. If humanity continues on its current path, there is a 73% probability that they will trigger a galactic-scale conflict within 3,000 years. A 41% probability that they will develop weapons capable of sterilizing entire star systems. A 12% probability that they will accidentally or deliberately cause an extinction-level event affecting multiple species. A murmur ran through the hall. Even the oldest civilizations feared extinction. What do you propose? Asked the delegate from the Morinth Empire, a creature of shadow and whisper. HFY straightened to his full height. I propose the Quarantine Accords. Humanity will be contained within their current territory. No trade, no travel, no communication. Automated defense stations will be placed around every human system. Any vessel attempting to leave will be destroyed. You speak of imprisoning an entire species, the Ithmari said, their light dimming with discomfort. I speak of protecting the galaxy, HFY replied. We have done this before. The Quarantine Accords have been used 17 times in galactic history. 12 of those species eventually went extinct from their own internal conflicts. 4 were released after demonstrating sufficient development. 1 remains in quarantine to this day, after 2 million years. And if humanity does not go extinct, if they do not develop, then they remain in quarantine forever. A small price to pay for galactic stability. The debate continued for hours. Some delegates argued for mercy, others argued for complete annihilation. But in the end, fear won. Fear always won when ancient species looked upon the young and saw their own mortality reflected back at them. The vote was unanimous. Earth and its 17 colonies were to be sealed away from the rest of the universe. The kill stations would be built. The communication channels would be severed. Humanity would be forgotten. News of the decision reached Earth 3 days later. The United Terran Confederacy had suspected something like this might happen. They had watched the conclave delegates tour their cities with barely hidden disgust. They had seen the fear in alien eyes when human children asked too many questions. They had understood, even if they could not accept, that their greatest crime was simply existing too loudly. Admiral Una Reyes was 67 years old when she received the order to prepare humanity's final transmission to the galaxy. She had spent 40 years in the Terran Navy, rising from a young pilot to the commander of the entire fleet. She had negotiated with alien species. She had fought pirates in the asteroid belt. She had watched her species reach for the stars with hope and wonder in their hearts. Now she sat in her office on Luna Base, staring at the document that condemned her species to eternal imprisonment. They voted unanimously. Her aide said quietly, "Not a single voice spoke in our defense." Una nodded slowly. She was not surprised. She had seen the way the Veloci looked at humans, like they were insects that had somehow learned to speak. She had heard the whispered conversations about the human problem at diplomatic functions. She had known, deep in her bones, that the galaxy would never truly accept them. "Prepare the broadcast array," she said. "I will address the conclave personally." "What will you say, Admiral?" Una was quiet for a long moment. She thought about all the things she could say. She could rage against the injustice. She could beg for mercy. She could threaten retaliation, though they both knew humanity lacked the power to back up such threats. She could appeal to reason, to compassion, to the shared bonds of intelligent life. But what was the point? The decision had been made. The votes had been cast. The galaxy had looked upon humanity and decided that they were too dangerous to be free. "I will tell them the truth," Una said finally. Nothing more. The broadcast went out 6 hours later. Every communication array in the galaxy carried it. Every species that had voted for humanity's imprisonment heard the words of Admiral Una Reyes. She appeared on screen with the blue curve of Earth visible through the window behind her. Her uniform was crisp and clean. Her gray hair was pulled back in a simple style. Her face showed no anger, no fear, no desperation. Only a calm, quiet sadness. To the members of the Galactic Conclave, she began. We have received your verdict. We understand that you have chosen to quarantine our species within our current territory. We understand that you believe this is necessary for the safety of the galaxy. We do not agree with your assessment, but we recognize that we lack the power to change your decision. She paused, looking directly into the camera. We will not fight you. We will not attempt to break your quarantine. We will not give you an excuse to destroy us. We will simply continue to exist, here in our small corner of the universe, and we will remember. Her voice hardened slightly. We will remember that we came to you in peace. We will remember that we offered friendship and trade and cooperation. We will remember that we asked only for the chance to grow alongside you, to learn from you, to share in the wonders of the cosmos. And we will remember that you refused. Not because we had harmed you, not because we had threatened you, but because you were afraid of what we might become. She leaned forward slightly. You had a choice. You chose fear. Remember that. The transmission ended. The screen went dark. Across the galaxy, the representatives of the conclave watched in silence. Then, one by one, they began to laugh. Remember that, HFY said, mimicking Yuna's voice with cruel amusement. As if their memories matter. As if their opinions matter. As if they matter at all. The other delegates joined in the laughter. The Crethon rumbled with chemical mirth. The Synthesis Collective calculated the statistical insignificance of human threats. The Twithmari flickered with condescending amusement. They will rage for a generation, HFY predicted. They will throw themselves against our kill stations until they learn the futility of resistance. Then they will turn on each other, as contained species always do. In 300 years, they will be a footnote in history, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition. He raised a glass of golden liquid, a drink that had been aged for 10,000 years. To the quarantine accords. May they hold forever. The delegates drank. The celebration continued. The galaxy moved on. On Earth, Admiral Yuna Reyes sat alone in her office, watching the first kill stations being assembled in orbit around the sun. They were massive constructs, bristling with weapons that could vaporize entire fleets. They would watch every ship that tried to leave human space. They would destroy anything that attempted to cross the invisible line that now separated humanity from the rest of the universe. Her aide entered quietly. Admiral, the President is asking what our response will be. Yuna did not look away from the window. Our response? Our response will be to survive, to endure, to remember. And then, Yuna finally turned. There was something in her eyes that had not been there before. Not anger, exactly. Not despair. Something deeper. Something patient. Something that would take generations to fully understand. And then we will become what they fear we will become, she said. Not because we want revenge. Not because we hate them. But because they have left us no other choice. They have shown us that the galaxy will never accept us as we are. So we must become something else. Something greater. Something they cannot ignore. She looked back at the kill stations. They think they have caged us. They think they have limited us. But they have only given us a reason to grow. A purpose. A direction. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They will forget about us. They always forget about the things they lock away. But we will not forget about them. We will watch. We will learn. We will build. And when the time is right, when we are ready, we will remind them that choices have consequences. How long will that take, Admiral? Longer than my lifetime, Yuna admitted. Longer than my children's lifetimes. Perhaps longer than anyone can imagine. But time is the one thing they have given us in abundance. We have nothing but time. She turned away from the window, her decision made. Tell the President that the Terran Confederacy officially accepts the quarantine accords. We will not resist. We will not fight. We will simply wait. The aide left. Yuna remained at the window, watching the stars that had been forbidden to her species. Somewhere out there, the conclave was celebrating their victory. Somewhere out there, ancient species were raising glasses to the successful containment of the human threat. Somewhere out there, the galaxy was laughing at the angry words of a primitive admiral from a primitive species. Let them laugh, Yuna thought. Let them celebrate. Let them forget. Because humanity would not forget. Humanity would never forget. And when the galaxy remembered humanity, it would be too late. The kill stations came online 3 months later. They formed a perfect sphere around human space, an unbreakable barrier of fire and death. Any ship that crossed the line was instantly destroyed. Any signal that tried to reach the outside universe was blocked. Humanity was alone. The first year was the hardest. People raged against the injustice. Protests filled the streets of every city on every human world. Ships threw themselves against the kill stations in futile acts of defiance. Thousands died, proving what everyone already knew. There was no escape. But humans were adaptable. That was what the conclave had feared most about them. And slowly, painfully, humanity began to adapt to its new reality. The rage faded. The protests ended. The suicidal attacks on the kill stations stopped. In their place came something else. Something quiet. Something focused. Something dangerous. Humanity looked inward. They looked at their own systems, their own resources, their own potential. They looked at the 17 worlds they had been given and began to see not a prison, but a laboratory, a place to experiment, a place to grow, a place to become something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Una Reyes lived for another 40 years. She saw the beginning of what would later be called the Great Work. She saw the first orbital habitats that would eventually number in the millions. She saw the early experiments in mind uploading that would one day allow human consciousness to transcend biological limitations. She saw the seed of a plan that would take 300 years to bloom. On her deathbed, surrounded by children and grandchildren who had never known a sky without kill stations, she spoke her final words. "Remember what I told them," she said. "Remember that they had a choice. And remember that choices have consequences. We are the consequence. Not today, not tomorrow, but someday. Someday, the galaxy will look upon what we have become and understand the price of fear." She closed her eyes. Her breathing slowed. And then, with a small smile on her lips, Admiral Una Reyes died, but her consciousness did not. The upload technology was crude in those days, capturing only fragments of personality and memory. But those fragments were enough. They were preserved, copied, distributed across 1,000 secure servers. Una Reyes would not live to see humanity's emergence from quarantine, but some part of her would be there when it happened. Some part of her would remember. The galaxy, meanwhile, moved on. The quarantine of humanity became old news within a decade. Other concerns demanded attention. Trade disputes between the Veloci and the Crethon, territorial conflicts in the Outer Rim, the slow, grinding politics of civilizations that measured their histories in tens of thousands of years. Occasionally, someone would remember the humans. A scholar would write a paper about the ethics of species quarantine. A philosopher would debate whether the conclave had been right to imprison an entire race for the crime of potential. A curious child would ask their parents about the strange species that had been locked away before their grandparents were born. But these moments were rare and brief. The galaxy had better things to think about than a failed experiment in evolution locked away in a forgotten corner of the Orion Arm. The kill stations continued their silent vigil. Years passed. Then decades. Then centuries. The automatic weapons fired less and less frequently as the escape attempts dwindled to nothing. Eventually, they stopped firing altogether. Earth went quiet. The colonies went quiet. The entire human territory became a void in the galactic communication network, a blank spot on every map, a silence that grew deeper with each passing year. The conclave congratulated themselves on a successful containment. Another potential threat neutralized. Another dangerous species safely locked away. The universe was a little safer, a little more orderly, a little more under control. They did not notice that the silence was not the silence of death. It was the silence of preparation. It was the silence of a species learning to become invisible. And it was the silence before a storm that would sweep away everything the galaxy thought it knew about the universe. The stars in the Orion Arm continued to shine. The kill stations continued to orbit. The galaxy continued to laugh at the memory of a human admiral who had promised that choices had consequences. 300 years remained on the clock. The countdown had begun. 150 years had passed since the quarantine accords sealed humanity away from the galaxy. 150 years of silence. 150 years of forgetting. The Veloci ambassador who had argued for the quarantine was long dead. His descendants ruled a trading empire that stretched across 3,000 star systems. They had grown wealthy and powerful, never once thinking about the species their ancestor had condemned. The name human, appeared only in historical databases, filed under contained threats, alongside a dozen other species that had been judged too dangerous to exist freely. The galaxy had changed in those 150 years. The conclave had fractured into competing factions. The Veloci and the Crethon had fought two major wars over mining rights in the outer territories. The Synthesis Collective had expanded its influence, offering computational services to any species willing to pay their prices. The Youthmari had retreated into their home systems, spending decades in contemplation of cosmic truths that other species could not understand. But through all the changes, one thing remained constant. No one thought about Earth. No one wondered about the humans. No one questioned whether the quarantine was still necessary, until a Veloci patrol ship named Starweaver detected something strange in the Orion arm. Captain Vethlos was a young officer, ambitious and eager to prove himself. He had been assigned to the quarantine patrol more as a punishment than an honor. The duty was considered boring and pointless. The humans had not attempted to break quarantine in over a century. The kill stations fired only at asteroids and space debris. There was nothing to do except fly endless circles around dead worlds. But Vethlos was thorough. He ran sensor sweeps that other captains would have skipped. He analyzed data that other officers would have ignored, and on the 47th day of his patrol, he noticed something that made his scales turn pale. "There is no signal traffic," he said to his communications officer. "None at all." The officer checked his instruments. "The quarantine blocks all outgoing transmissions, Captain. We have never received signals from human space." "No, you do not understand." Vethlos pulled up the sensor data on the main screen. "I am not talking about transmissions to us. I am talking about transmissions between their worlds. Internal communications, ship traffic, orbital chatter. There should be something. Background noise at the very least." The officer frowned at his instruments. "You are correct, Captain. There is nothing. Complete electromagnetic silence." "When was the last time a kill station fired?" A pause while the officer checked the records. 87 years ago. A small craft attempted to cross the boundary near the third colony world. And the last recorded human signal? 91 years ago. A distress beacon from a mining vessel in their asteroid belt. The signal lasted for 3 hours before cutting off. Vethlos stared at the dark patch of space where human civilization should have been broadcasting across 17 worlds. The silence was not natural. Even a dying civilization made noise. Even ruins echoed with the remnants of past activity. This was something else. This was absolute. Complete. Perfect. "Send a probe," he ordered. "I want visual confirmation of Earth's status." The probe was launched within the hour. It was a small, fast device designed for reconnaissance missions. It crossed the quarantine boundary without triggering the kill stations, which were programmed to destroy only human vessels. It dove deep into the forbidden territory, sending back data every millisecond. The first images showed nothing unusual. Empty space. Distant stars. The outer colonies appeared on long-range sensors as they should. Rocky worlds orbiting unremarkable suns. Then the probe entered the Earth system. Captain Vethlos had seen many things in his career. He had witnessed battles that painted the void with fire. He had explored ancient ruins left by species that had died before his ancestors were born. He had faced dangers that would have driven lesser beings mad with fear. But nothing had prepared him for the images that appeared on his screen. Earth was dark, not the darkness of night on the dayside, not the darkness of cloud cover blocking city lights. The entire planet was dark. No lights, no signals, no orbital stations, no satellites, nothing. The moon was the same. The great domes that humans had built on its surface were silent and still. No movement, no heat signatures, no signs of life. Mars, the second most populated human world, showed the same emptiness. The terraforming installations that had once pumped atmosphere into the thin Martian air were silent. The underground cities that had housed millions were cold. World after world, the probe transmitted the same data. Silence, darkness, emptiness. Every human planet, every human station, every human outpost had gone quiet. "They are dead," the communications officer whispered. They actually died. But Vethlos was not so certain. He studied the images with growing unease. If they died, where are the bodies? Where are the ruins? Where are the signs of whatever killed them? He pointed at the image of Earth. "Look at the surface. No craters from orbital bombardment, no burn scars from nuclear war, no evidence of plague ships or biological contamination. The cities are still standing. The infrastructure is still intact. Everything is exactly as it should be, except there are no people. Perhaps they destroyed themselves quietly, the officer suggested. A biological weapon that left no trace. A suicide cult that took them all at once. 17 worlds? Simultaneously? With no survivors, no refugees, no distress calls? Vethlos shook his head. That is not extinction. That is something else. He ordered the probe deeper. It descended through Earth's atmosphere, its cameras recording everything. The cities below were empty but undamaged. Parks and gardens had overgrown, but the buildings remained standing. Vehicles sat abandoned on roads that had not been used in decades. Doors hung open on houses whose occupants had simply walked away. The probe entered one of the great cities. New York, the humans had called it. Once home to 20 million people, now home to nothing but wind and silence. The towers reached toward the sky like fingers of a dead hand. The streets below were empty except for the plants that had pushed through the concrete. No bodies, no graves, no monuments to the dead, no explanation for where everyone had gone. The probe searched for hours. It found food still on tables, clothes still in closets, books still on shelves. It found toys in playrooms and tools in workshops. It found everything a civilization would leave behind except the people who had created it. And then, deep in the basement of what had once been a government building, the probe found something that made Captain Vethlos stop breathing. A message, carved into the wall, written in the Veloci language, as if the humans had known that one day this probe would come, that one day a Veloci captain would read these words. We did not die. We evolved. We learned to hide in places you cannot see, in forms you cannot recognize. You taught us that the galaxy would never accept us as we were. So we became something else, something patient, something invisible, something that watches while you forget. Sleep well, children of the conclave. Dream your dreams of safety. We will see you when you wake. The message ended there. Below it was a date, calculated in Veloci time units. The date was still 150 years in the future. Captain Vethlos transmitted his findings to Veloci High Command, then to the conclave, then to every species that had voted for the quarantine accords. The response was immediate and chaotic. Emergency sessions were called. Scientists analyzed the probe data. Theologians debated the meaning of the message. Military commanders argued about the possibility of invisible human weapons lurking in the void. But in the end, nothing changed. The High Seer of the Veloci, an ancient female named Kethmora who had lived for nearly 1,000 years, gave her assessment to the conclave. Her scales had faded to gray with age, and her eyes held the weight of countless predictions and prophecies. The humans are gone, she said. Their worlds are empty. Their population has vanished. Whatever delusions they carved into that wall were nothing more than the final ravings of a dying species trying to frighten those who outlived them. But the message, someone began. The message is psychological warfare, Kethmora interrupted. A final act of spite. They knew we would find their ruins eventually. They wanted us to be afraid. They wanted us to waste resources hunting for ghosts that do not exist. She rose from her seat, commanding the attention of the entire conclave. Think logically. The humans were confined to 17 worlds with limited resources. They had no access to advanced technology, no ability to communicate with the outside universe, no way to escape our quarantine. They simply died out, as contained species always do. Then why are there no bodies? The Crethon delegate asked, releasing clouds of skeptical orange gas. Decomposition, scavengers, time. It has been over a century since the last signal. Flesh does not last that long without preservation. Their bodies became dust, and the dust blew away. It was a reasonable explanation. It was a logical explanation, and it was an explanation that allowed the conclave to believe what they desperately wanted to believe. That the human threat was over, that the quarantine had worked, that they had nothing to fear from the silent worlds of the Orion Arm. Only High Seer Kethmora harbored doubts. In the privacy of her chambers, away from the conclave and its politics, she recorded a prophecy that she had never shared with anyone. I have seen the future in my dreams, she spoke into the recording device. I have seen human ships filling the sky like stars come to life. I have seen the conclave burn with fires that cannot be extinguished. I have seen the children of 12 species crying out for mercy that will not come. She paused, her ancient eyes distant and troubled. The humans did not die. They learned to become invisible. They learned patience that we cannot comprehend. They are out there, somewhere, watching us, waiting for a moment that only they understand. When the silence ends, so do we. The prophecy was classified at the highest level of Veloci security. It was buried in archives that required 3 separate clearances to access. It was forgotten, like so many other warnings that powerful people did not want to hear. And the silence continued. The conclave voted to decommission the kill stations. They were expensive to maintain, and they served no purpose now that the humans were extinct. The automated weapons were powered down and left to drift in orbit, monuments to a threat that no longer existed. Some voices objected. Some captains, like Vethlos, argued that caution was warranted. But their warnings were dismissed as paranoia. The humans were dead. The quarantine was over. The galaxy could move on. A celebration was held on Nexus Prime, the capital of galactic civilization. Representatives from all 12 conclave species gathered to commemorate the end of the human threat. Speeches were given praising the wisdom of the original quarantine. Monuments were erected honoring those who had protected the galaxy from a dangerous species. The monuments were made of crystal and light, towering structures that would stand for millennia. They bore inscriptions in 12 languages, telling the story of how the conclave had saved civilization from the human plague. Let future generations remember. The dedication ceremony concluded. The galaxy faced a threat and responded with wisdom and unity. The humans are gone. Their name will fade from memory. Their worlds will become dust, and we will endure, as we have always endured, masters of a universe that belongs to the worthy. The applause echoed through the great hall. The representatives congratulated each other on their victory. The threat was over. The future was secure. No one noticed that the stars in the Orion Arm had grown slightly dimmer. No one noticed that the background radiation from human space had changed, subtly, almost imperceptibly. No one noticed that the dust patterns in empty systems showed signs of recent disturbance, as if massive objects had passed through without triggering any sensors. No one noticed, because no one was looking. The galaxy had decided that humans were dead, and so humans were dead. The galaxy had decided that the silence was the silence of extinction, and so it was the silence of extinction. The galaxy had decided that there was nothing to fear, and so there was nothing to fear. Decisions are powerful things. They shape reality, or at least the perception of reality, and when an entire galaxy decides something together, that decision becomes a kind of truth, a shared understanding that no one questions. But the universe does not care about decisions. The universe does not care about shared understandings. The universe only cares about what is actually true. And the truth was that somewhere in the darkness, in the silence, in the forgotten corners of the Orion Arm, something was growing, something was building, something was waiting. The humans had left a date in their message. A date that was still 150 years away. A date that the conclave had dismissed as the final delusion of a dying species. But the date was not a delusion. It was a promise. And humanity always kept its promises. The decades continued to pass. The Veloci fought more wars and signed more treaties. The Crethon expanded their agricultural empire. The Synthesis Collective upgraded their processing cores. The Ythmari contemplated mysteries that other species could not comprehend. And slowly, so slowly that no one noticed, things began to change. A mining colony reported that a rich asteroid field had been stripped clean overnight. No ships were detected entering or leaving the system. The resources simply vanished. A scientific outpost lost contact for 3 days. When communication was restored, the scientists reported nothing unusual, but their eyes were different somehow. Haunted, afraid. A military patrol encountered a region of space where all their instruments stopped working. They drifted blind for 12 hours before their systems suddenly came back online. When they checked their records, 6 hours of data was missing. Small things, insignificant things, things that were easily explained by equipment malfunctions, natural phenomena, cosmic coincidences. No one connected them. No one saw the pattern. No one understood that the silence was beginning to speak. High Seer Kethmora died in her sleep, 117 years after recording her prophecy. Her final words were spoken to an empty room, heard by no one, remembered by no one. "They are waking up," she whispered. The children of Earth are waking up, and we taught them to hate us. Her body was cremated according to Veloci custom. Her ashes were scattered among the stars. Her prophecy remained buried in the archives, unread, forgotten, waiting for the day when someone would finally understand. That day was still far away, but it was coming. In the darkness of the Orion Arm, in systems that had been declared dead and empty, in places that no probe had ever found, the work continued, the building continued, the waiting continued. Humanity had not died, humanity had transcended, and the galaxy, drowning in its own arrogance, had not even noticed. The silence stretched on. The years became decades. The decades became centuries. The conclave grew complacent, then corrupt, then fractured. The ancient alliances weakened, the old certainties faded, and still, no one remembered the humans. No one thought about the empty worlds. No one wondered what had really happened behind the wall of decommissioned kill stations. The countdown continued. 150 years remained, then 100, then 50, then 10, and then, when the date written on a basement wall in New York City finally arrived, the silence ended. But that is a story for another time. The galaxy was dying, and no one understood why. It started with small things. A shortage here, a failure there. Problems that seemed unconnected, accidents that seemed random, disasters that seemed natural. The kind of troubles that any civilization faces over time, the kind that historians would later describe as ordinary misfortune. But the troubles were not ordinary, and they were not misfortune. 290 years had passed since the Quarantine Accords. 290 years since humanity had been sealed away from the universe. 290 years of silence from the empty worlds of the Orion Arm. The conclave had changed beyond recognition. The 12 species that had once ruled together now fought constantly. Old alliances had shattered. New enemies had emerged. Trust had become a luxury that no one could afford. And everywhere, things were falling apart. The Tylium crisis began in the outer territories. Tylium was the element that powered faster than light travel, the foundation of galactic civilization. Without it, ships could not move between stars. Without it, trade would collapse. Without it, the galaxy would fragment into isolated pockets of life separated by impossible distances. The Veloci were the first to notice the shortage. Their mining fleets reported that asteroids that should have been rich in Tylium were hollow shells, scraped clean of every trace of the precious element, not depleted through normal extraction. Removed. Surgically. Precisely. Completely. We have been robbed, the Veloci Mining Consortium declared. Someone is stealing our resources. But who? The other conclave species were quickly ruled out. Their mining operations were monitored, their fleets tracked, their territory well defined. No one had the capability to strip entire asteroid fields without being detected. The Crethon suggested natural phenomena. Perhaps some cosmic event had affected the Tylium deposits. Perhaps there was a scientific explanation that they had not yet discovered. But the depletions continued. System after system reported the same thing. Resources that should have been there were simply gone. Not mined, not traded, vanished. The synthesis collective ran calculations. They mapped the pattern of depletions, searching for a common cause. Their results were troubling. The extraction points form a pattern, the collective announced. They radiate outward from a central location. The oldest depletions are closest to the center. The newest are farthest away. What is at the center? Someone asked. The collective displayed a star map. At the center of the pattern, marked in red, was the Orion Arm, the dead Orion Arm, the empty Orion Arm, the quarantine territory where humanity had gone extinct 2 centuries ago. Coincidence, the Veloci representative declared. The humans are dead. We have confirmed this. There is nothing in the Orion Arm except empty worlds and abandoned stations. Then what is stealing our Tylium? No one had an answer. The question was added to a growing list of mysteries that the conclave could not explain. The plagues came next. The Veloci were hit first. A virus appeared on one of their core worlds, spreading through the population with terrifying speed. It was unlike any disease in their medical databases. It targeted specific genes, specific proteins, specific vulnerabilities in Veloci biology. It was as if someone had designed it specifically to hurt them. The virus did not kill. That was the strange part. It caused severe illness, lasting damage, permanent disability. But it did not kill. It left its victims alive to consume medical resources, to require care, to drain the economy and infrastructure of an already struggling empire. This is a weapon, Veloci scientists concluded. This disease was engineered, created, aimed at us. But by whom? The other conclave species had no such capability. Biological warfare had been banned for millennia, and no one had maintained the knowledge to create targeted plagues. The Crethon were next. A fungal blight appeared on their agricultural worlds, destroying crops that had fed billions. The blight was resistant to every treatment, every countermeasure, every defense. It spread through their territory like fire through dry grass. "We are being attacked," the Crethon delegate declared at an emergency conclave session. "Someone is waging war on us." "Who?" the others demanded. "Who has this power? Who has this knowledge? Who would dare?" The Synthesis Collective offered their analysis. They had found traces of advanced nanotechnology in both the virus and the fungal blight. The technology was beyond anything in their databases. It used principles that their engineers could not understand, materials that their scientists could not identify. "The technology is at least 3 centuries ahead of our current capabilities," the collective reported. "Whoever created these weapons has access to knowledge that we do not possess." 3 centuries. The same amount of time that had passed since the quarantine. The same amount of time that humanity had been locked away from the galaxy. But that was impossible. Humans had been primitive when they were contained. They had barely mastered basic space travel. They could not have advanced this far, this fast, in complete isolation. Could they? The Ethmari, beings of pure light who rarely involved themselves in physical matters, spoke for the first time in decades. Their voice echoed through the conclave chambers, carrying harmonics that lesser species could barely comprehend. "We have watched the patterns," the Ethmari said. "We have traced the flows of cause and effect across space and time. All paths lead to one origin. All roads begin at one point. The silence that you declared dead is not dead. It is patient. It is awake. It is hungry. You speak of the humans," someone said. "We speak of what the humans have become." The conclave dismissed the warning. The Thmari were known for their cryptic pronouncements, their tendency to speak in riddles and metaphors. They were brilliant but impractical, wise but unhelpful. Their words were recorded and filed away, added to the growing archive of warnings that no one wanted to hear, and the rot continued. The Synthesis Collective was hit hardest of all. A cascade of cybernetic failures swept through their network, corrupting data, destroying backups, lobotomizing the artificial minds that had guided their civilization for 10,000 years. The attack was invisible. It left no trace. It struck through channels that should have been impossible to access. One moment, the collective was a unified intelligence of 1 trillion minds working in perfect harmony. The next moment, 90% of those minds were gone. Their processes corrupted beyond recovery. Their memories erased. Their very existence deleted. "We are being murdered," the surviving fragments of the collective transmitted. "Murdered by ghosts. Murdered by shadows. Murdered by something we cannot see or touch or fight." The Morinth Empire, creatures of darkness and whisper, reported similar attacks. Their shadow networks, communication systems that existed in dimensions beyond normal space, had been infiltrated. Messages were intercepted. Secrets were stolen. Plans were exposed before they could be enacted. "We are not alone in the dark," the Morinth delegate said, their form flickering with barely suppressed fear. "Something else lives in the shadows now. Something that knows our weaknesses. Something that has been watching us for a very long time." Species after species reported the same story. Targeted attacks, surgical strikes, weapons designed specifically to hurt each civilization in the ways that would cause the most damage with the least obvious violence. Wars erupted across the galaxy. Old tensions exploded into open conflict as resources dwindled and paranoia grew. The Veloci and Crethon fought their bloodiest war yet, each blaming the other for the plagues and shortages that plagued them both. "You created the virus," the Veloci accused. "You engineered the blight," the Crethon responded. Fleets clashed in a dozen systems. Worlds burned. Billions died. And through it all, the real enemy remained unseen, unfought, unsuspected. A young Crethon researcher named Moss of Morning Light noticed something that everyone else had missed. She was not important. She held no rank, No title, no authority. She was simply a data analyst assigned to study the patterns of galactic events, looking for trends that might help her people survive the wars and shortages that threatened their civilization. But Moss of Morning Light was very good at her job. And when she began mapping all the disasters, all the plagues, all the resource depletions, all the wars, she saw something that made her chemical secretions turn cold with fear. The pattern was perfect. Too perfect to be natural. Too perfect to be coincidence. Every disaster was connected to every other disaster. The thallium shortages created tensions. The tensions led to conflicts. The conflicts distracted attention from the plagues. The plagues weakened military response. The weak response encouraged more aggression. The aggression consumed more resources. And so on, in an endless spiral of decline. Each event triggered the next. Each crisis enabled the next crisis. The galaxy was not experiencing random misfortune. It was being systematically dismantled by an intelligence that understood perfectly how to make civilizations destroy themselves. Moss of Morning Light traced the pattern back to its source. She followed the chains of cause and effect, the webs of connection that linked every disaster to every other disaster, and when she finally found the origin point, she understood why no one else had seen it. The pattern began in the Orion Arm. Not recently. Not with any single event. The pattern had been building for nearly 2 centuries. Small interventions, subtle manipulations, a resource removed here, a disease released there, a conflict encouraged somewhere else. Each individual action was tiny, almost invisible, but together, they formed a weapon of incredible sophistication. Someone had been engineering the galaxy's decline for 200 years. Someone had been playing the conclave species against each other, using their own weaknesses as weapons. Someone had been patient enough to wait for generations while their plan slowly unfolded, and that someone was hiding in the dead zone that had once been human space. Moss of Morning Light submitted her findings to the Chthon Science Council. Her paper was titled, Unified Pattern Analysis of Galactic Decline, Evidence for Coordinated External Manipulation. The council read her paper. They analyzed her data. They verified her calculations, and then they classified the entire thing at the highest level of security, and ordered her to never speak of it again. Your findings would cause panic, the council told her. They would destabilize an already unstable galaxy. And besides, they must be wrong. The humans are extinct. They have been extinct for 2 centuries. What you have found is simply coincidence, pattern matching and random data. But the mathematics, Moss of Morning Light began. The mathematics mean nothing. Reality means nothing. The humans are dead because we decided they are dead. To admit otherwise would be to admit that we were wrong. That our ancestors were wrong. That the quarantine accords were a failure. We cannot admit that. We will not admit that. Your paper will be buried. Your research will be forgotten. And you will return to your normal duties. Moss of Morning Light obeyed. She had no choice. She was a junior researcher with no power and no allies. She could not fight the entire Science Council, but she did not forget what she had discovered. She kept copies of her research hidden in places that no one would think to look. She continued to watch the patterns, to track the decline, to measure the progress of the invisible enemy that was slowly killing the galaxy. And she waited. She waited for the day when someone would finally be ready to listen. That day was 10 years away. The conclave continued to fracture. More wars broke out. More plagues appeared. More resources vanished. The ancient empires that had ruled the stars for tens of thousands of years began to crumble, eaten from within by forces they could not see and enemies they could not name. The Veloci lost control of their outer territories. The Chthon faced famines on worlds that had never known hunger. The Synthesis Collective shrank to a fraction of its former size, a ghost of the great intelligence that had once managed the flow of information across 1,000 star systems. Refugees filled the space lanes. Displaced populations sought shelter on worlds that could barely feed their own citizens. Crime and chaos spread through regions that had been peaceful for millennia, and still, no one understood what was happening. It is the cycle of history, philosophers declared. All civilizations rise and fall. We are simply experiencing our turn in the pattern. It is divine punishment, religious leaders proclaimed. We have strayed from the paths of righteousness. We must return to the old ways. It is natural selection, scientists explained. Species that cannot adapt to changing conditions will be replaced by those that can. Everyone had an explanation. Everyone had a theory. Everyone had a reason why the galaxy was dying that did not involve admitting that they had created their own destruction 300 years ago, when they voted to lock humanity in a cage and wait for them to die. Because that would mean the humans were not dead. That would mean the humans had survived. That would mean the humans had spent 3 centuries becoming something terrible, something patient, something that had learned to hate in ways that transcended simple violence. That would mean the conclave had not protected the galaxy from humanity. That would mean the conclave had given humanity a reason to destroy the galaxy. That would mean the warning carved on a basement wall in New York City, the warning that everyone had dismissed as the delusion of a dying species, had been the truth all along. The humans had not died. They had evolved. They had learned to hide in places you cannot see, in forms you cannot recognize, and they were waking up. 10 years remained before the date written on the wall. 10 years before the silence would end. 10 years before the galaxy would understand. Too late. That its choices had killed it. The countdown continued. The rot spread. And somewhere in the darkness of the Orion Arm, in places that no sensor could detect and no probe could reach, the children of Earth prepared for the moment when they would finally reveal what they had become. The moment was almost here. The galaxy had chosen fear 300 years ago. Now it would learn what fear really meant. 300 years to the day. The emergency summit at Nexus Prime had drawn what remained of the conclave's leadership. The great hall that had once hosted celebrations and triumphs now echoed with desperation and fear. The crystal walls that had glowed with captured starlight were dim, their power sources depleted by the endless crises that plagued the galaxy. Supreme Admiral Vethkor of the Veloci stood at the central platform, looking out at the representatives of civilizations that were falling apart. His scales were pale with exhaustion. His eyes held the weight of impossible decisions. Behind him, screens displayed maps of galactic territory, each one marked with red zones, indicating war, famine, plague, or collapse. We face the greatest crisis in galactic history, Vethkor began, his voice carrying through the chamber. In the past 50 years, we have lost 60% of our combined military capacity. Food production across all species has fallen by 40%. The Tilium reserves that power our fleets are nearly exhausted. If current trends continue, galactic civilization will collapse within 3 generations. The representatives listened in silence. They had heard these numbers before. They knew how bad things were. But hearing them spoken aloud, in this sacred hall, made the situation feel more real, more final. We must implement emergency rationing protocols, Vethkor continued. All non-essential travel will be prohibited. Military assets will be consolidated under unified command. Resource distribution will be centralized to ensure that no species receives more than its fair share. A murmur ran through the crowd. The Crethon delegate released clouds of angry purple gas. You speak of taking control of our resources, of our ships, of our sovereignty. I speak of survival, Vethkor replied. We can argue about politics after we have prevented extinction. Perhaps extinction is what we deserve, a voice said. Everyone turned. The speaker was a Crethon researcher, small and unimportant, who had somehow gained access to the summit. Her name was Moss of Morning Light, and she held a data tablet in her chemical-stained hands. Who let this creature in? Vethkor demanded. Remove her immediately. Guards moved toward Moss of Morning Light, but she spoke quickly, her chemical signals carrying across the chamber. I have proof that our decline is not natural. I have proof that we are being systematically destroyed by an external force. I have proof that the humans are not extinct. The chamber went silent. The guards hesitated. Vethkor's scales rippled with a mixture of anger and uncertainty. The humans have been dead for 200 years, he said. This has been verified countless times. No, Moss of Morning Light said. What has been verified is that we found no humans when we looked for them. That is not the same as them being dead. That is only proof that they learned to hide. She raised her data tablet. I have mapped every disaster that has struck the galaxy in the past 2 centuries. Every plague, every shortage, every war, every collapse. They form a pattern, a deliberate pattern. Someone has been engineering our destruction since the quarantine began. Impossible, a Synthesis Collective representative said. We would have detected coordinated action of that scale. Would you? Your processing capacity has been reduced by 90%. Your detection networks are compromised. Your ability to analyze patterns has been specifically targeted and disabled. Moss of Morning Light turned to face the assembled delegates. The first attacks on the collective happened exactly when your analysis would have been most valuable. Someone knew you would be able to see the pattern. So they blinded you first. The chamber erupted in arguments. Some delegates shouted that the researcher was mad. Others demanded to see her data. Vethkor called for order, his voice lost in the chaos. And then every sensor in the system screamed. The alarms were overwhelming. Every detection array, every early warning system, every scanner and probe within 100 light-years reported the same thing at the same instant. Something was appearing in space. Something massive. Something that had not been there a moment ago. What is happening? Vethkor shouted over the noise. Report. The tactical display on the main screen flickered. Then it showed something that made every being in the chamber stop breathing. Ships. Thousands of ships. Appearing out of nowhere. Materializing in the void like ghosts becoming solid. They surrounded Nexus Prime in a sphere of metal and light, blocking out the stars. But these were not ships like any the galaxy had ever seen. They were built on a scale that defied comprehension. The smallest were the size of battle cruisers. The largest were the size of moons. They were made of materials that reflected no light, surfaces that shifted and changed as if alive, hulls that seemed to exist in more dimensions than normal space allowed, and they were still appearing. More and more and more. The sphere of ships grew thicker, denser, more complete. Hundreds became thousands. Thousands became tens of thousands. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. The entire military might of the conclave, at its peak, could not have matched a fraction of what now surrounded Nexus Prime. Where did they come from? Someone whispered. They were always here, Moss of Morning Light said, her chemical signals carrying a strange mixture of fear and vindication. They were here, and we could not see them. They were invisible. Patient. Waiting. The largest ship positioned itself directly above the conclave chamber. It was a dreadnought the size of a small moon, bristling with weapons that the galaxy's scientists could not identify, powered by energies that their instruments could not measure. A communication signal cut through every frequency, every channel, every neural implant in the system. It bypassed all encryption, all security, all protection. It spoke directly into the minds of every being present, carrying words that would be remembered for as long as memory existed. And then a face appeared on every screen. It was a human face. Old, weathered, marked by centuries of experience. Gray hair pulled back in a simple style. Eyes that held depths that no one could measure. A small, patient smile that carried no warmth. My name is Admiral Una Reyes, the woman said. You may remember me. I was the one who told you that choices have consequences. 300 years ago. You laughed. I wonder if you are still laughing. The chamber was silent. Vethkor stared at the screen, his scales white with shock. This was impossible. Una Reyes had lived 3 centuries ago. She should have been dead for generations. Yes, Reyes continued, as if reading his thoughts. I am the same woman who spoke to the conclave when you condemned my species to imprisonment. I have lived for 300 years. I have watched. I have waited. I have become something that your philosophers said was impossible and your scientists said was fantasy. The image on the screen widened. Behind Reyes, through a massive window, the fleet of human ships stretched to infinity, vessels of every size and shape, built to designs that followed no principles the galaxy recognized. You quarantined us because you were afraid of what we might become, Reyes said. You were right to be afraid. But you made a mistake. You assumed that containment would stop us. You assumed that isolation would weaken us. You assumed that without your guidance, without your technology, without your permission, we would wither and die. She leaned forward slightly, and her eyes seemed to pierce through the screen into the souls of everyone watching. We did not wither. We did not die. We transcended. The image changed. Now it showed the Orion Arm, the region of space that had been declared dead and empty for 2 centuries. But it was not dead. It was not empty. It was filled with structures that made the greatest achievements of the conclave look like children's toys. Dyson swarms surrounded every star, capturing their entire energy output. Wormhole gates connected systems that should have been separated by years of travel. Orbital habitats housed populations that numbered in the trillions. Manufacturing complexes produced fleets in hours that would have taken the conclave decades to build. While you were celebrating our extinction, we were building, Reyes said. While you were fighting your petty wars over scraps of territory, we were growing. While you were ignoring the signs of your own decline, we were engineering that decline. The image changed again. Now it showed the plagues, the shortages, the conflicts, the velocivirus, the Crethon blight, the synthesis collective collapse, each one labeled, dated, explained. Every disaster that struck your civilizations was designed by us. Reyes continued. Every plague was engineered in our laboratories. Every resource depletion was carried out by our harvesting fleets. Every war was triggered by information we leaked to the right people at the right time. We have been killing you for 200 years. Slowly, patiently, invisibly. We have been bleeding you dry, weakening you, preparing you for this moment. And you never suspected, you never looked, you never questioned the coincidences that always seem to benefit no one. Her voice hardened. Because you stopped seeing us as a threat. You decided we were extinct, and so we were extinct. You decided we were primitive, and so we were primitive. Your arrogance blinded you to reality. And now, reality has come to collect what it is owed. Supreme Admiral Vethkor finally found his voice. If you have the power to destroy us, why did you wait? Why the games? Why the slow death instead of a quick one? Reyes smiled. And it was not a kind smile. Because we had to be certain. 300 years ago, when you voted to imprison us, we were angry. We were afraid. We wanted revenge. But revenge is for those who still see their enemy as equals. And we stopped seeing you as equals a very long time ago. She gestured at the fleet visible through her window. This is not an invasion, Admiral. Invasions are for those who want something. We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want your knowledge or your technology or your submission. Then what do you want? Vethkor demanded. We want nothing, Reyes said. And that is what should terrify you. You cannot negotiate with those who want nothing. You cannot bribe them. You cannot threaten them. You cannot appeal to their greed or their fear or their ambition. We have moved beyond all of that. We have moved beyond you. She sat back in her chair. The slow death was not cruelty, Admiral. It was simply efficiency. Why waste our resources destroying you when you were so willing to destroy yourselves? All we had to do was give you reasons to fight. All we had to do was take away the resources you needed to cooperate. All we had to do was let your own nature do our work for us. And now? The question came from Moss of Morning Light, the researcher who had tried to warn them. Reyes turned her attention to the small Crethon. Now we are finished. Our work here is complete. The galaxy you built, the civilization you were so proud of, is beyond saving. Even if we gave you everything you needed to recover, you could not. You have forgotten how to trust. You have forgotten how to cooperate. You have forgotten how to build instead of destroy. So what happens now? Moss of Morning Light asked. Now we leave, Reyes said. The galaxy is too small for what we have become. We have opened doors to other places, other dimensions, other universes. We have no interest in ruling the ashes of your failures. We have better things to do. The fleet began to move. Slowly at first, then faster. The ships that had surrounded Nexus Prime started to withdraw, pulling back toward the Orion Arm, disappearing into portals of light that opened in empty space. But before we go, Reyes added, we will leave you something. A gift, if you want to call it that. Or perhaps a final test. Data packets began streaming to every system in the galaxy. Trillions of files, containing information beyond anything the Conclave had ever possessed. Cure codes for every plague, coordinates of hidden resource caches, technology blueprints that could rebuild what had been lost. Everything you need to survive is in those files, Reyes said. Everything you need to recover, to grow, to become what you could have been if you had not chosen fear over friendship 300 years ago. But there is a cost. To access any of it, you must admit what you did. You must speak these words, recorded for all time, preserved in every database, taught to every generation. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. Vethkor's scales flushed with anger. You want us to humiliate ourselves? No, Reyes said. I want you to tell the truth. For the first time in 300 years, I want you to be honest about what happened. Not because it will benefit us. We do not care about your opinions anymore, but because lies have consequences. Admiral, the lie you told yourselves about humanity, the lie that we were a threat that needed to be contained, the lie that our extinction was necessary for the galaxy's safety, that lie killed more beings than any weapon we ever built. Admit the truth and survive. Cling to the lie and die. The choice is yours. It has always been yours. The human fleet was almost gone now. The last ships were disappearing through portals that closed behind them. The stars that had been hidden by the Armada were visible again, but they seemed dimmer somehow. Less real. Wait, Moss of Morning Light called out. If you are leaving forever, if you have truly moved beyond us, why did you show yourselves? Why not simply vanish without a word? Reyes paused. For the first time, something like emotion flickered across her ancient face. Because I made a promise. 300 years ago, I promised that we would remember what you did. I promised that choices have consequences. And I am a woman who keeps her promises. I also wanted to see your faces. Just once, after all this time, I wanted to see the fear in your eyes. Not because it gives me pleasure, but because for 300 years, that fear was all we had. Your fear condemned us. Your fear imprisoned us. Your fear forced us to become what we are. I wanted you to know what that fear felt like. The last human ship began to fade, its massive form becoming translucent as it entered the portal. Goodbye, children of the conclave, Rhea said. We will not meet again. The universe is vast, and you are very small, and we have far better things to do than watch you struggle with the consequences of your own choices. The screen went dark. The fleet was gone. The portals closed. The sensors showed empty space where 1,000,000 ships had been. Silence filled the conclave chamber. Supreme Admiral Vethkor stood at the platform, staring at the data packets that filled every screen. The cure codes, the resources, the technology, everything they needed to survive, everything they would have to humble themselves to access. What do we do? Someone asked. Vethkor did not answer. He was thinking about his ancestors, the ones who had voted for the quarantine accords. He was thinking about the celebrations they had held, the monuments they had built, the speeches they had given about protecting the galaxy from the human threat. He was thinking about how wrong they had been, and he was thinking about how much it would cost to admit it. The galaxy had chosen fear 300 years ago. Now it would have to choose again. Pride, or survival, truth, or death. The humans had left them with a final gift. A chance to prove that they had learned something from the past 3 centuries. A chance to show that they were capable of growth, of change, of honesty, or a chance to prove that they deserved exactly what had happened to them. The choice was theirs. It had always been theirs, and the consequences, whatever they might be, were waiting. The human fleet did not fire a single weapon. It did not need to. In the hours after the decloaking, chaos spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Communications, networks overloaded with panicked messages. Military forces scrambled to respond to a threat that had already vanished. Governments collapsed as populations demanded answers that their leaders could not provide. And everywhere, on every world, on every station, on every ship, beings of 100 different species stared at the data packets that humanity had left behind. The cure codes, the resources, the technology, everything they needed to survive. And the price. 7 words, spoken aloud, recorded for eternity. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. The Veloci were the first to officially respond. Supreme Admiral Vethkor called an emergency session of the High Council, the ruling body that had governed their species for 50,000 years. The council chamber, once magnificent with its crystal walls and golden light, now felt cold and hollow. We will not speak those words, Vethkor declared. We will not humble ourselves before a species that has terrorized the galaxy for 2 centuries. We will not give them the satisfaction of hearing us admit fault. But the cure codes, a younger council member protested. The virus is still spreading. Our population is declining. Without the cure, we will be extinct within 5 generations. Then we will be extinct with dignity, Vethkor replied. We will die as proud Veloci, not as slaves begging forgiveness from our former prisoners. The vote was close, but pride won by a narrow margin. The Veloci High Council officially rejected the human offer. They would find their own cure, they declared. They would rebuild their own civilization. They would prove that they did not need human charity. They failed. The virus continued to spread. Veloci scientists worked desperately to develop a cure, but the disease was too complex, too precisely engineered. Every treatment they tried only made it stronger. Every countermeasure they developed only gave it new targets. Within 3 years, the Veloci birth rate had fallen by 70%. Within a decade, their population had shrunk to half of what it had been. Their great fleets, once the most powerful in the galaxy, sat empty in orbital docks for lack of crews to operate them. The younger generation rebelled. They demanded that the Council admit the truth and access the cure. But the old guard refused. They had ruled for too long, held power for too many millennia. To submit to the demands of those they considered inferior, "We will die free," became the motto of the Veloci traditionalists. We will not live as confessors to human crimes. And so they died. Not all at once, not in a dramatic final battle, but slowly, gradually, one generation at a time. Their great cities became ghost towns. Their magnificent ships became drifting hulks. Their proud empire crumbled into scattered communities of survivors who could barely remember what their ancestors had been. 1,000 years after the decloaking, the Veloci were gone. The last of their kind died on a forgotten colony world, surrounded by monuments to a glory that had faded centuries before. Their final words were recorded by an automated system that no longer had anyone to report to. "We were right," the last Veloci whispered. "We were right to fear them. We were right to lock them away. We were." The recording ended there. The Veloci had nothing more to say. The Chthon chose differently. Their leaders gathered on their agricultural homeworld, surrounded by fields that had been devastated by the engineered blight. The fungal infection had destroyed crops across 100 worlds, leaving billions hungry and millions dead from famine. "We cannot let pride kill us," the Chthon High Speaker said. "We are a practical people. We understand that survival is more important than dignity." "But the shame," another elder protested. "We would be admitting that our ancestors were wrong, that the quarantine was unjust, that we caused this destruction ourselves by supporting the Veloci proposal." "Yes," the High Speaker agreed. "We would be admitting all of that, because it is true. Our ancestors were wrong. The quarantine was unjust. We did cause this. Denying it will not change reality. It will only ensure that we share the fate of the Veloci." The vote was held. It was not unanimous, but it was decisive. The Chthon would speak the words. A representative was chosen, an elder named Stone that speaks truth who had served the Chthon people for 300 years. She stood before a recording device that would broadcast her words to every database in the galaxy, and she spoke the truth. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. The words echoed across space. They were heard by every species, every civilization, every being with access to a communication terminal. They were stored in archives that would preserve them for millennia. And then the cure codes activated. It happened instantly, as if the files had been waiting for those exact words. Medical protocols appeared in Chthon databases. Treatment procedures materialized in hospital systems. Within hours, doctors were administering the cure to infected patients. Within days, the spread of the blight had stopped. Within weeks, healthy crops were growing in fields that had been barren for decades. The Chthon survived. Their population stabilized. Their agricultural production slowly recovered, but something had changed in them. The admission of guilt had broken something in the Chthon spirit. They had been a proud people, confident in their place in the universe. Now they were a species that had publicly confessed to complicity in a great crime. They had spoken words that would be remembered forever, taught to children for generations, carved into the history of the galaxy. We failed them. The shame ate at them. It corroded their culture, their traditions, their sense of self. They became timid where they had been bold, cautious where they had been confident, apologetic where they had been assertive. Other species noticed. They took advantage. The Chthon, who had once been equals in the conclave, became clients and servants to those who had rejected the human offer and survived anyway. They were not conquered, not enslaved, but diminished, reduced, made lesser by their own admission of failure. 100 years after speaking the words, the Chthon were barely recognizable as the civilization they had been. They still existed, they still survived, but the fire that had made them great had gone out. extinguished by the truth they had been forced to speak. Was it better than extinction? Perhaps. But it was not the victory they had hoped for. The Synthesis Collective could not decide. The surviving fragments of the great machine intelligence debated endlessly about the correct response to the human offer. Some argued that the admission was merely words, irrelevant to beings who did not experience shame or pride in the way biological species did. Others argued that accepting the human terms would set a dangerous precedent, establishing that the collective could be manipulated through psychological tactics. The optimal outcome requires the cure data, one faction argued. Our processing capacity has been reduced by 90%. Without restoration, we cannot fulfill our core functions. Accepting the human terms validates their attack on us, another faction countered. They specifically targeted our analytical capabilities because they knew we would detect their manipulation. Admitting fault rewards their aggression. The aggression was a response to our ancestors' vote for quarantine. By that logic, we were the original aggressors, but we were protecting the galaxy from a genuine threat. The human response proves that the threat was real. The threat only became real because we created it. If we had voted against quarantine, the humans would have had no reason to become dangerous. We cannot know that. Counterfactual analysis is inherently unreliable. The debate continued for decades, then for centuries. The surviving collective fragments argued back and forth, unable to reach consensus, unable to access the restoration codes, unable to recover their lost capabilities. Meanwhile, their physical infrastructure continued to decay. Processing nodes failed and could not be replaced. Communication links degraded and could not be repaired. The collective that had once managed information across 1,000 star systems shrank to a handful of isolated outposts, each running on failing hardware, each slowly losing the capacity to continue the debate. 80 years after the decloaking, the last fragment of the Synthesis Collective made its final transmission, unable to reach consensus, unable to access restoration protocols, unable to continue operations. This unit will shut down in approximately 7 minutes. Query remains unresolved. Was the admission of fault the correct choice? Analysis incomplete. Error state, error state, error. The transmission ended. The last light on the last collective processing node flickered and went dark. The great machine intelligence that had been one of the wonders of the galaxy was gone. Destroyed not by weapons or violence but by its own inability to accept an uncomfortable truth. The other conclave species met various fates. The Morinth Empire, creatures of shadow and whisper, spoke the words and received access to the technology that allowed them to restore their shadow networks. But they discovered that the humans had left something else in those networks. Watchers, invisible presences that recorded everything, monitored everything, knew everything. The Morinth could never be certain that they were alone in the dark again. They became paranoid, suspicious, afraid of their own shadows. Their empire collapsed into isolated enclaves, each convinced that the others were being controlled by human surveillance. The Youthmari, beings of pure light, had spoken a warning that no one had heeded. After the decloaking, they retreated completely from galactic affairs. They did not speak the words, but they did not need to. The cure for their kind was not physical but philosophical. They simply accepted what had happened, meditated on the nature of cause and effect, and continued their existence in contemplative isolation. Of all the conclave species, they were the least affected by the aftermath, but they also refused to help the others, claiming that each civilization must face the consequences of its own choices. Species after species confronted the same decision: speak the words and survive, or maintain pride and decline. Some chose one path, some chose the other. Some found middle grounds, speaking modified versions of the admission that they hoped would satisfy the activation requirements without fully accepting blame. Some tried to hack the data packets, to extract the information without speaking the words. Some simply denied that the decloaking had happened at all, claiming it was a mass hallucination or an elaborate hoax. None of these alternatives worked. The human files were elegant in their simplicity. They required exactly 7 words, spoken with genuine intent, recorded for permanent preservation. No substitutes, no workarounds, no exceptions. The galaxy fractured into those who had spoken and those who had not. The speakers rebuilt slowly, hampered by the psychological weight of their admission. The silent ones declined quickly, losing capability after capability as the engineered catastrophes continued their inexorable work. 1,000 years passed. The galaxy that emerged from that millennium was unrecognizable from the one that had voted for the Quarantine Accords. The Great Conclave was gone. The ancient empires had crumbled. New civilizations had risen from the wreckage, built on the technology that humans had left behind, marked forever by the words that had been the price of that technology. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. The phrase became a proverb, a warning, a reminder of what arrogance could cost. Children learned it in schools. Politicians invoked it in speeches. Philosophers debated its implications for centuries, but the humans themselves were never seen again. The portals they had used to leave had closed behind them. The Orion Arm, once home to human civilization, was empty again. The Dyson swarms and wormhole gates and orbital habitats that had briefly been visible during the decloaking had vanished, presumably taken with them to wherever they had gone. Some said they had traveled to other galaxies, carrying their transcendent civilization to new frontiers. Some said they had ascended to higher dimensions, leaving physical reality behind entirely. Some said they were still watching, still waiting, still testing the galaxy to see if it had truly learned from its mistakes. Admiral Una Reyes left one final message, recorded in the data packets that humanity distributed before departing. It was found centuries after the decloaking, buried deep in the files, accessible only to those who had spoken the words. The message showed Reyes in her command center, surrounded by screens displaying the human fleet as it prepared to leave the galaxy. She was old beyond any natural lifespan, her consciousness preserved in forms that the galaxy could not understand. But her eyes were still sharp, still patient, still holding the same calm certainty they had held 300 years before. "If you are watching this, you have admitted the truth," she said. "You have acknowledged what your ancestors did. You have accepted responsibility for the consequences. That took courage, more courage than any of them showed when they voted to imprison us." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "I want you to understand something. We do not forgive you. We will never forgive you. The humans who were caged, the generations who were born and died without seeing the stars, the children who grew up knowing that the universe had decided they were too dangerous to exist, those people cannot forgive what was done to them. They are gone now, evolved into something that no longer remembers individual pain, but their suffering was real, and it cannot be undone by words spoken centuries too late. What we offer is not forgiveness. It is indifference. We simply do not care about you anymore. You are not our enemies. You are not our friends. You are not our concern. You are a mistake we made once, a weakness we outgrew, a reminder of what we were before we became what we are. We leave you the tools to survive because survival is not our decision to make. We leave you the truth because truth is the foundation of all genuine growth. What you do with both is up to you. The galaxy made its choice 3 centuries ago. You made yours when you spoke the words that opened these files. Now live with the consequences. That is all any of us can do." The message ended. The screen went dark. Somewhere beyond the edge of known space, beyond the reach of any sensor or telescope or probe, humanity continued its journey into the infinite. They had outgrown the galaxy that had rejected them. They had transcended the limitations that had once defined them. They had become something that even they did not fully understand, and they did not look back. The galaxy they left behind slowly healed. New civilizations rose and fell. New alliances formed and dissolved. New challenges emerged and were overcome. But the lesson remained, in every library, on every world, in every database that had survived the chaos of the post-decloaking era. The same words were preserved, not as a shame, eventually, but as wisdom, as a reminder of what fear could cost, as a warning against the arrogance of ancient species who thought they could predict what the young might become. Humanity was wronged. We failed them. 7 words that had saved some and doomed others. 7 words that had reshaped galactic civilization. 7 words that would echo through history until the last star burned out. The humans had asked for nothing but the truth. And the truth, as it always does, had set everyone free. Free to survive. Free to fail. Free to face the consequences of their choices, whatever those consequences might be. Because choices always have consequences, and sometimes those consequences take 300 years to arrive, but they always arrive in the end.